I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
I love to see my people party with me, man. Good to see you, Black Brown, Sweet Nikita. Miss
All right, everybody,
Rhoda.
welcome to I Mix What I Like. Come on in, come on
Happy
in.
birthday, Miss J. Hey, Rhea, Sweet Sharita. Party with me.
Peace, peace. Like,
All
share,
night long. Say
subscribe.
what? That's right, baby. Bring it to the front. Hey, Janine. Well, guess what?
What's up, what's up, what's up?
Hey, when I see you, yeah, I get a little happy. Hey, Black Brown, I get a little happy when I see
We got
you.
another
What?
banger for you today.
Baby, when I see you, yeah, I get a little happy. Hey, Francine, I get a little happy when you party with me. Well, guess what? When I see you, yeah. Hey, Jay, hey, Randy, I get happy when you party with me. Guess what?
Peace. King Ramsey, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hey, Cole, I get a little happy. Happy when I
UK
see
in the
you.
building.
When I see you,
Peace.
Listen, fellas, I put your picture on my mirror.
Dang.
Start to blush when somebody said your name. And my stomach is a pain. See you walk in my direction, I go the other way.
Somebody's
I start
ready
to
to join
stutter
the
when I
band.
speak. Try to stand, but my knees go weak. What's happening to me? Anybody can you tell me what it means? I lay my head
And
on
for
my
folks who may not be
pillow.
aware,
He got me staring
this
out the
is
window.
Washington,
Was gonna stop for a
D.C.
sign. That's the reason
Authentic.
why, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Locally created pocket called Go-Go Music.
Hey, Marlon,
The best
sexy
pocket
boy.
ever created by humanity. Followed second, of course, by salsa.
When I see you.
And this is the perfect, this is DC Vibe
Hey,
Band,
fellas,
BYBB.
listen. I
And they are giving you a good vibe of what the shows are like.
Checking out my
This
hair
is why I
and
like
my
this.
nails.
One of the reasons why I like this video
Myself
so
up in
much.
the zone. You're nervous when you call. Say I'm not home. See your face. I hear my favorite song. Should I send an email at home? I wonder if you know, or do you have a clue? Yeah, I lay my head on my pillow. He got me staring out the window. Was gonna stop for a sign. That's the reason why. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. See you. Yeah. Marlon, so sexy, boy.
That's the info right there.
When I see you. Listen, something now is taking over me. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna run. I'm just gonna stand here and see. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no. See you, said you're so sexy, boy. Yeah. Oh no. When I see
Facts.
you. Hey Fox, hold me down. Listen. Well, guess what? When I see you, yeah, yeah. Hey, sweet Sunita. Hey, get happy when you party with me. Hey, Janine. When I see you, yeah, I get a little happy. Hey, Tony, I get a little happy when you party with me. Hey, Tim, when I see you,
I like, what I like, what I like.
Exactly. You can't tell me this music don't put a smile on your face. I'm telling you, go-go music is for me the perfect vibe corrector every time. Every time. Feel a little slow in the morning, a little lag, little whatever. What happened to my background though? What happened to my background though? Oh, I closed the application. Anyway, everybody, please welcome back to I Mix What I Like. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be your host. Please like, share, subscribe, do all of the things, and support the platform, support all of our satellite platforms as well. I did mean to have a little bit of a, speaking of vibes, I was trying to set the vibe for maybe where I'd like to be. But we have a great show today. We're going to be talking about the work of Ghassan Kanafani again with Sudip Bhattacharya and our Donut King project. Again, all the links are in the show description to Sudip's work, to our playlist, and to more. So please check all of those, the rest of that content and all the other videos that are coming out on the platform. And again, in our satellite spaces, please avail yourselves of the content and share it, hype it, do all of those things that help it reverberate to the extent possible. All right, without further ado, let me bring Sudip up and let's get our publicly held meeting started. Sudip, welcome back. It's good to see you again. How are you? You're muted. I don't hear you. How come I don't hear you? There you go.
It's me. It's my mic. Thank you for having me back on.
No, of course. What's the latest before we get started? What's the latest with Eddie? What's the latest as you
Just
see
with
it?
me?
Yeah, just in as you see with you, with the world as you see it, etc. and so forth.
I mean, in honor of our troops who do no wrong, I think America shot some random missiles into South Iran last night, just because you know, who cares about Iranian lives according to some.
Support the troops.
Support the troops at any. I mean, put stickers up. You know, when there's a jet
the
over
yellow
your
ribbons. Yeah.
Yes, and when there's jets flying overhead, throw a ribbon up at the sky as far as you can, and hopefully a jet catches it. And that's when you know you're in love. That's when you know good luck is coming your way, when a jet catches it. So that's what's up. But also with the book, I think, I don't know, something about this week has also been a little bit more, you know, I don't want to say hopeful because it's so bizarre to feel that way, but reading this book helped just to give a materialist analysis as to like how we got to this point, and also just the fact that Palestinians have been resisting for a while and they won't stop. So there's that. That's what
yeah.
You know.
No, I actually agree, and I've said for a long time that I felt that selfishly something that has helped my mental health over the years was having some materialist explanation to what was happening to me be made apparent. You know, I think for a lot of us, we before experiencing some form of political education, we go through I think stages or variations of feeling the problem. Like people know there's a problem, and we just don't always know how to identify it, label it, or to how to counteract is what we're trying to do with this project. The narratives we're getting, because from day one, you know, from the first thoughts we're given, I mean, we're told, you know, everything is great. You're in a free democracy, the American dream.
Right.
You know, if there's any problems, if you encounter any problems, you know, some of it may be a vestige of the old past, but for the most part, it's really your fault.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but wait a minute. And then as you start to learn, at least for me, as I started to be able to fill in those gaps, be like, okay, at some point, it's like, I know that's a lie. I can't explain it yet.
Right.
And in fact, I actually whittled it down to one particular argument I had in the Navy, in fact. And it was with a white dude who wow, this is now I'm going down a whole anyway. The point was that I remember and it was literally the last time I argued with a white person about race, and then I argued from a position of ignorance. Like I knew in that moment, I know I'm right. I just don't know. I just don't have any information. So he was throwing these things, those racist stats out. Well, how come? Like I remember one of them was, how come there's more black people in jail than in college?
Okay.
And at the time, I'm like, I know that's bullshit, but I don't have. I had no explanation for it. So I started to resort to violence. I was like, well, if I can't explain it,
I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, let's just that's do. I mean, I think one of those. Well, I just wanted to quickly also. I think one of the contradictions of living in an empire too is that my Knicks are now in the finals. So last night,
congratulations!
So last night I was watching that, and then I was watching these YouTube fan shows that I watch, and I was just thinking like, well, there's that, but then also the contradictions of it because the owner is a horrible person, and the tickets are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I am seeing, our favorite people at front, like Spike Lee, Timothy, Marty Supreme, whatever, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad those. Oh,
Chalamet, Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah. He's a New Yorker apparently. And then he has, I forget which Kardashian it is, but I think she's the youngest, and she had said at one point, she is a self-made billionaire. So it is what it is, but they were down there. Yeah, because she only got like a slight leg up than us. I mean, she only had her sisters do a TV show and get some brand deals, but who doesn't get a little taste of that?
Yeah, who doesn't start with just a few million, a few tens of millions?
She would be a failure if she lost it all, but she's a success because she made more from it. So
a self-made success, Sudip.
Self-made success.
Don't
Yeah. I didn't mean to, but it was bizarre because I really loved the team, and it's just one of those like little blips of like, joy in the sense of just watching something and being into the fan base. And the fan base is pretty chill, they're really nice. But then at the same time, I'm like, but then I hear through them too, like all the private jets coming to celebrate overnight once they knew Cavs are losing, and the Cavs gave up. It was hilarious, but that just made me feel sour too. I was like, oh my God, this is just ridiculous. But trying to be, a little level in that sense. Because also the classes I'm teaching, I use the poem that has to do with the contradiction of capitalism and being a Tribe Called Quest fan and the Knicks. It was all bottled up in this one poem. So it's all in the last 2 weeks. Knicks has been on my brain for those reasons.
Who could be mad at that? Who could be mad at that? And yes, done and none. To what degree do these guys just engage in the BS statistical manipulation to complete fabrication of numbers? Of course, but that's why I'm a qualitative guy. That's why I don't do quantitative stuff. But also, and salute to her, because I remember shortly after that argument, I remember that I got out of the Navy, and I think right around that time or a little bit after that, Faraj Shadea published the book. I always remember, Don't Believe the Hype. And in that, it was an early 90s, a slightly left of center liberal book about race and about just those kinds of phony numbers. And one of the stats she talked about was that exact claim, that there are more black people in jail than in college. And she went through all of the reasons why that is a nonsensical claim, many of which are apparent and easy to identify now. I mean, even just starting with the fact that college age is usually just 18 to 22. So obviously imprisonment's going to encompass much more of a range of age than that. So already it's, but yeah, so she went, so I just always remember that book and appreciated her for that. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to, because I have my students in the race ethnicity class I teach. We read this one conservative author. I forgot his name. He actually was going to write for the Atlantic, but then maybe his name is Kevin Williamson. But then he got into even hotter water because he has insane view. He's a secular person and someone who's not really faith, but he is deeply anti-abortion. I think to the extent of wanting women to be charged with murder.
Oh,
So
wow.
when he signed up for the Atlantic, and you and I know the Atlantic is, of course, the bottleneck of like revolutionary theory.
Oh, of
But
course.
when I'm just rifling through the Atlantic to know what I should think. But he lost the job. But I have my students read an article he wrote for the National Review about going to this really poor white place in Appalachia, I think. And again, he like the reason why I had them learn about this class, read this paper, wasn't really just about the poor whites that are there. It was also still how he was still being racist against people of color, with the assumptions that poor whites shouldn't even be there. They've failed as whites. Now they're at the level of, in his mind, indigenous people and other people and black people. He mentions music all the time, like how they're playing Kanye. This is back in the day. And in one part that was really interesting, he mentioned he smuggled in a little bit of what that guy you fought with was trying to do. He smuggled in this idea that, yeah, but it's interesting to note that in these areas, violent crime is down. But he just smuggled it in really politely. And I had my students focus on that. I was like, what do you think? What do you think he's trying to say? And most of them got it. And then I found stats that said, well, that's stupid. It's not true. And also, even in the article, it wasn't true. He admitted, I think, in some instances where people killed people. So it's just, it is what it is. And the stats themselves are just sometimes, you can do a lot. Like I learned quantitative methods and I forgot all of it. But one thing I remember was regression. Like if people don't know, you can do all these tables and data points, and then you can put them into a machine. I'm sounding so old, but and then you can do the independent variable, the dependent variable. You can flip them around, which one causes which, until sometimes you get a quote unquote what's the word, like connection or causation.
I don't know. There you go. Yeah, I was just going to say I don't remember because all of my trauma is being reignited by your.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. I'm so sorry.
To this day, I married the woman that helped me through my stats class. That's how dependent. I was like, you know what? I need to just go ahead and marry you because I can't do these numbers. I'm basically hopeless.
Well, my partner helps with tips, so I understand. I'm just like staring at the tip. I'm like, oh, do I give $200? And she's like, we paid for $15.
Well, tips I learned at a young age because that was a big deal. My mother, because it was a big deal in our house, and in fact, there's been family fights over it when people don't tip. Like tipping was major because we're a labor-focused household.
Good.
So it was just find the 10% and then double it as a minimum, because 20% was always the bare minimum when I was growing up, at least.
Right.
And so I could always find the 10%, but that's about all the math I could do. Like I can pay bills. I can, make change if I work the cash register, but that's about it. But when you start talking about regression models and all that other stuff, I was like, I put my hand up for help. And then as I said, I married the woman that helped me get through my stats class.
I went through it with friends' help, and all I can say, the lasting thing, I don't know anything anymore. I remember that summer I was like, oh, I'm going to use this at least occasionally to make graphs for my articles. Didn't do it at all. But the one thing, if people don't know, you can press that button that says like put the numbers into a system and it'll come out with some, whether or not it is sufficient or causality. You can put in whatever stat you want either way until you find the right thing. So the causation still is explained by us. We have to explain, though. The numbers don't explain what's going on. And plus, in terms of white people, I think more of them should be like, a lot of them commit crime. So it's like, it's not an indication of anything. The results is not the indication. There's so many white people who commit mad loads of crime.
And the best crimes. I mean, the settler colonial crimes,
right.
Enslavement and genocide and nuclear bomb crimes. Like they do like elite level stuff. We haven't elevated to their scale of criminality yet. We're still, but so just real quick, I'm going to use this as a plug. I'm going to shamelessly plug Doc Ball. You got out the Navy, or they got you out the Navy. It was a mutually agreeable situation, and it was the one thing I needed no political education to know from day one. I did not want to stay in. I got out as soon as I could. I couldn't wait to get out, and that was the only thing I understood about it. And if you really want to know more about that, you can go watch the E3 and below film video that I made about my Navy experience, the film that the Navy would never allow me to make, never allowed to be made, E3 and below, where I go into detail about that whole experience. And So there's the shameless plug. Oh no, I'm running blackmail stereotype about math. My bad. Is that, I'm assuming that's a stereotype? I don't know. All right. Sudip, listen. So first of all, you know what? I meant to say this, and I meant to even prepare, and I just ran out of time because I can't, honestly, I read too slowly. I don't know if you've read this yet, but Laura does, because we're reading Ghassan Kanafani today. Today. She brings up Kanafani and reproduces as by way of demonstration. And I'm not going to get into it because I haven't prepared it and I don't want to do it. And I just want to note, I just want to at least raise this up, that she recounts an interview that I'm not going to be able to find now. I believe it starts on page 132, a conversation between the sword and the neck. In a now celebrated 1970 interview with Richard Carlton in Beirut, Ghassan Kanafani, Palestinian revolutionary author and Beirut-based representative of the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, brilliantly embodies psychic militancy. And then she goes on to explain how he carries himself throughout this interview. And in many ways, it reminds me of, for instance, when we've talked about, for instance, how George Jackson handled himself in an interview, or Malcolm X handled himself in an interview, or other revolutionaries, the way they parry certain questions that are attempting to move them in a certain way, and make sure to give the answer they want as opposed to what the questioner is looking for. And so I don't want to do it a disservice, but I just meant to put this on yours and anyone else's mind grapes, particularly those interested in these subjects and Kanafani in particular. But so you encourage that we read the relatively short book from Kanafani, the 1936-39 Revolt in Palestine. I'll remind people that Samantha, Youssef, and I talked about Palestine 36 or 36, the film about this history. So please check the channel for that, and I'll put that in the show description as well if you haven't seen it. Let me let you lay out your overview or initial thoughts, or maybe why you see this book fitting within our Donut King project.
I just want to say to, I forgot her last name, but Dr. Lara, like I've seen some of her episodes too, and she was on the Matume Gantz within our gates, and it was excellent. Like she's really good at also just breaking things down that initially I would be scared of dealing with just because it's psychoanalysis, but she's amazing. So I'm definitely going to think of getting that book too. It's like one of the few books I feel like I can put my budget towards to get.
It's worth it, and a very accessible read. She's great. And Samantha, Youssef is awesome. So I think I did watch that one, and I'm trying to watch the movie soon. I don't think it's been released on streaming yet. But the reason why I wanted us to read this is for two reasons. Well, one is because I definitely felt on-Zionist literature was just perfect in terms of giving a little bit of that sense of like what to look for in culture, how to attribute it to material needs, in that case imperialism, and also doing it from the side of the oppressed to the oppressed, from the oppressed to the oppressed, in really understanding the oppressor side and how they really feel. I really do feel like he was trying to let Palestinians know. I mean, obviously all of them knew by then, post 67, but I think he was trying to tell the rest of the world who would be sympathetic already, maybe saying, hey, these people, you can't deal with them like what you think, like the peace plan, throw it out the window because, oh, thank you, she, because she, and I think it's she-ha. I think it's pronounced. I think that's because I struggle. Man, I've really been beaten down by this colonial education. So, but yeah, and so yeah.
No,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. But so in that sense, it was more like that book was useful because, again, it is a Marxist-Leninist approach, but one that's deeply anti-colonial, which is kind of reflected in how he has his criticisms of the Palestinian Communist Party, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But this book, I just want to show the copy of it that I got from my local bookstore. They brought it in. It's just really beautiful. 1804
Yeah.
books. It's really like, when I showed my partner, she was like, wow, like it looks really gorgeous. It's really nice. And
Yeah, they're killing all of their books.
Mhm.
They're killing it.
Yeah.
The just as art, their books. Yeah.
It just shows you can do a good job, because there's a lot of academic publications that don't seem to care whatsoever about what's on a cover, but then you have 1804 books, which I'm pretty sure does not receive the same level of funding or support as academic publishers do, who are out here doing, like, I don't know, just, it's beautiful. It's really nice. Oh, Sheha. Okay. Thank you for that. I don't want to bastardize that name, because I've had situations with my name, so I don't want to do that. But yeah, no, the other reason I wanted to, so the first reason for that is to complete that, complete that 1-2, the sense of culture, how it's built, and then the other side of that is the insistence of revolution, and also how it can go astray, which we'll talk about, because it ultimately didn't work out exactly the way that Palestinians wanted. And of course, the repression of this moment was the creation of Israel proper, really. This is when you see that connection being made that Ghassan is making, Kanafani is making. And then finally, for our project particularly, just some analysis that I feel we could say is the proper analysis to have when thinking about intellectual class people, because that's rife through the book, and also thinking about how to actually situate our own people in a real political economic analysis. And I wrote this term because I'm constantly thinking of ways of framing our project, but I think, like, we are living, the military industrial complex, but we're also living under the economic financialization complex. And so how to both understand it is through a bit of Kanafani, and how to maybe understand where we were headed and how it went astray is also to understand Kanafani and what he was looking at. So that was kind of the couple of reasons I wanted us to, like, go through the book.
Yeah, no doubt. And just for my quick thoughts on the connection to our project, and again, this Donut King series, for anyone who's not aware of what we're doing, these are more or less Sudip and I having our project meetings publicly to talk about the Donut King and these and our challenge to the prevailing narratives around Black and Asian economics. And for my purposes, one of them, at least, this constant refrain that Black people need to do what one or another group of Asians or Jews or some other group have done. And as you've pointed out, the people we tend to refer to, and I remember Youssef Ben Yochanan used to say, why do we call it the Middle East? Middle from what? And he would always argue this isn't part of removing Africa from the world, but also to say what at one point was East Africa is really now Western Asia. So to your previous point, we're talking in terms of Palestinians about Asians. So as we, but then the other thing that I really, in terms of the specificity around our project and my own narrow work, is that obviously as a Marxist analysis, Kanafani addresses himself to political economy, and then even more specifically to public policy. So there's so much in here outside of, yes, there's the violence, and yes, there are numbers that he recounts in terms of population and moving and Jewish migration and Palestinian removal. So he does, but he's talking about the violence of the physical violence of warfare, settler colonialism, removal, genocide, etc. But he keeps, at least in my mind, at least what I kept noticing, he keeps coming back to some policy which requires political power, state power. And that's what I keep. So when people keep coming back and saying Black people need to just set up a business and get their money right, then they can address themselves to electing officials in political power. I'm saying, no, this is the psychological warfare that has been imposed on us to keep us away from what should be our only focus, which is political power, which then allows you to determine through policy everything. So that was my initial, and then we can start to go into the weeds, so to speak. Now, and this is actually what I meant to have as my background, but I did want to, I played a clip. If you don't mind, I want to just play. I played this yesterday as a sort of teaser in my discussion with Two Black, and just as a precursor to our conversation, a little bit of a tone setter. I wanted to play this little segment of a documentary that, if it's not already there, I'll put in the show description. Although I think it is already there. Just to give us a little bit of a tone set. I just selected this part, and then we can get to the conversation.
They brought the full force of the empire to bear. Britain deployed 2 full divisions, nearly 25,000 regular troops, alongside heavy artillery and the Royal Air Force. By the end of 1938, there was 1 British soldier for every 37 Palestinian Arabs. Villages were blown up. Whole sections of Arab Jaffa were leveled. Villagers were herded into barbed wire cages for days without food or water. In the cages of Hulhul, 13 people died of dehydration. When the Royal Ulster Rifles lost 4 of their own to a Palestinian landmine, they descended on the village of Al-Bassa, along with the 11th Hussars. They torched the village, rounded up 50 men, forced them onto a bus, then ordered the driver to run over a landmine. Survivors were cut down by machine gun fire. The British sidelined Arab police and recruited some 3,000 Jews into a new supernumerary police force, integrating them directly into the bloody counterinsurgency apparatus. In addition, the British recruited Zionist Haganah fighters into the Special Night Squads, led by the British officer Ord Wingate, a fanatical Christian Zionist.
So I just wanted to put that little bit of a piece to it, in part because Wingate comes up in Kanafani's work, which I thought was an interesting, important overlap. And then so much of what Kanafani is talking about is and Wingate is a monster, by the way. This guy, this is another one that needs to have his name added to that list of that list that everyone knows that they have. That should not, by the way, include Stalin and Mao. Just I know liberals like to always do that. It's like this. But anyway, but Wingate is a monster, and Kanafani in quick short order exposes that. Maybe we can come back to that. But he also does that, as Kanafani talk about a lot of this British role that I think naturally, particularly for us relative lay people, gets left out. So how, again, I'll follow your lead. How if there's particular points that you want to raise, or something that, a section you want us to look at, or whichever.
I'll go with you. I mean, the only thing I wanted to add is also, so this is the point in time when the immigration of European Jews was increasing,
Right.
intensifying, and also the 36-39 revolution, as he's covered, is really, this is still before Israel proper is founded, but this is what he says is like laid the foundations for that, as you can, and that's a great clip. I'm saying great because it's depressing, but it is great in how succinct it is. But one thing I do want to say, the British, so 36, as he describes, there was it's one revolution, but it got clipped slightly. There was a little bit of a dip. And then the second round was happening, and the British were losing. Actually, the British, because by 38, 39, now they're, rounding out for World War II. And so they were losing. So that's important to remember too, for the reasons of the Palestinians were actually going to win, because as a guerrilla force, they know the land. The British really just got to know it recently, because it was mostly Ottoman it was all Ottoman territory. The only reason this is crucial, and this again speaks to how European colonial, not just colonialist Zionism is. This is when the British go all in on recruiting recently immigrated Jews from Europe into that supernarrative force. So that's just to say they were going to lose. And that's when they said, you know what? We're done trying to tinker with both sides, because they kind of did. Come on in. We're going to give you all the help you need. And most of all, to your point, we're going to sanction the violence you do versus the violence that other people should be doing, really, right? So that's the other key component. It's really about the fact that you guys get to have the weapons, tear up villages, and also, and we'll get into it, there's some really eerie, not eerie, they're very obvious, but there's parts in this book that are so stunning to think about because, again, he was murdered so young, but he had referenced certain infrastructure that was being built at that time by the British with the Zionists. I think they built a road through Haifa and Tel Aviv, like a port road that was, he says, extremely important to the so-called Israeli success story, which again goes back into what we're saying, which is, you know, you have black folks, sometimes brown folks who reference Asians, mostly East Asian, because brown folks also do it to ourselves, but also black folks have also sometimes referenced Jews. And then there is a weird sense that Israel is that culmination of Jewish ingenuity, but it's not. It's just a reference point for things that were happening at this time.
That's what and so it's funny you said that, because when my mind immediately went to Southern Africa and how Indians and African laborers were used to build railroad tracks, for instance, to the coasts and stuff like that, to help build the infrastructure for colonialism and all of that. And what Kanafani shows, and then I also thought of the Southern United States and the foundation of the police force, because he says, and I thought, and honestly, I read this and thought, wow, man, Kanafani is really being a principled scholar, because he gives, I thought almost, this is just my bias given what's going on in the world right now and my focus on it, but or a new attention to it. I thought he was even being too nice to the issue of class as opposed to the issue of nationalism when considering what was happening there, because he talks about Jewish laborers who he's basically saying, and I've even made a note at one point, honestly, that this is again the mythology that was handed me through my mother's mother, or through my mother about her mother, that she was from an impoverished Eastern European community that felt, again, the word they use, tricked by the Zionist movement to go and populate that region, and then left in the early 1900s when they realized this wasn't, and that's why my mother ended up being born in her siblings in New York, because
that's so interesting.
And Kanafani kind of talks about them a little bit in the sense that he's talking about Jews. He's talking about the labor class of Jews who are invited in with this mythology, some of it about socialism and the grand project, and then they realize, hold up, and he talks about, like, they had what I heard from my grandmother saying, they had this peaceful coexistence with the Arabs. Like and Kanafani talks a little bit about this documentary I'm referring, talks a little bit about that the Arab population also, by the way, included Jews.
Right.
They weren't all from Eastern Europe. And that there was this relatively, I'm not trying to put a whatever on it, but this relatively peaceful coexistence. And it was the Zionist movement that Kanafani's talking. So he's distinguishing the Zionist movement that came in and messed this all up and started adding all this other stuff. And again, that's why my grandmother left and her family left. And then he's talking about, my point to the connection to the Southern United States, that, as you said, when the British said, okay, we need help, conscript the poor Jews and put them in the police force. I was like, what the fuck, man?
I was thinking that exactly for that. I forgot you. That's exactly what I thought. Well, when he mentioned the Histradut, like, he mentioned how there was also this Jewish labor Zionism, which I love that he said, because people do have, okay, remember that little time when there was a anti-Netanyahu movement in Israel prior to them just going all crazy and killing all the Palestinians and stuff. So I remember that because there was this insistence by some liberals and left here who are like, oh, this is a moment, this is a step forward. Of course, people forgot that one guy waved the Palestinian flag in one of these resistance crowds and got taken up. But what I'm saying is this book goes against that mythology too, clearly, because he's saying, to your grandmother's point, there is this Palestinian Communist Party that was mainly Jews from Europe initially, but they weren't like Zionists. They were hoping to navigate this terrain in the way that your grandmother was kind of saying or thinking, like there's a coalition we can have. We want to have respite too, and they weren't seeking to take over. But the brilliance of this writing shows how, listen, the labor Zionism that you think of too, that's too simplistic just to say there isn't anything there beyond. Because to your point, I thought of that exactly, because that's the racial bribe. That's the bribe. Hey, poor white person or working class white of the prison system too. You can get a security job, beat the shit out of someone who's black or brown, or maybe
it's happening with ICE right now.
And that happens with Latinos also, and other groups of people who just want to be. Yeah.
There was a headline right here in Baltimore of black and brown ICE agents pictured arresting a brown person. And I was like, this is that. And I should have kept it or I should go find that, because that needs to be the colonial poster of the 21st century. Like that's the image
and it's still colonial. That's the other thing. Like it's still a colonial system. Like people like to, not people, but there is a confusion sometimes where like, well, how does that relate? It relates easily. I mean, the thing that's so funny is I tell my students this, like when India or the British Raj existed, the South Asians outnumbered the British. It wasn't a settler colonial project as they were attempting later in Kenya quite desperately, because now they're like, we got to do it really fast in the 50s. And that's why the Mau Mau was like, we're going to just kill you. This is crazy. So, but the point is, they still got what they needed, even though in the army, you had Indians recruit. There's like a shout out to my Punjabi friends, because Punjab also became a staple of resistance, and Bengal too. But the irony within these two communities, one of which I'm from, there was also people who were part of that apparatus. So to your point too, it's not new either. It's just maybe different language. Maybe it's not as explicit, although I would argue now it kind of is sometimes. But to your point, it's colonial. And I just love this book because when he's saying these things, he's not giving up on his principle and he's not giving up on his wide-pern view, but he's also not into hallucinations. Like complete hallucinations of, because I've heard it sometimes when this genocide was first started, this new genocide, or I would say the genocide got accelerated. There were some people, right, not rightfully, but out of a sense of righteousness, saying this is the moment where the Palestinians and the Israelis who were in that movement proper. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this would be like asking Jews in Warsaw Ghetto to organize with people in Berlin. Like, it's so weird and offensive. And no one is arguing there won't be a moment. But right now, the moment is nationalism for the Palestinians and ending the colonial question. Because as much as, there might be a working class exploitation, one side is getting bombed the fuck out. And the other side is getting weapons.
Yeah. So exactly.
Sorry for cursing. Sorry. Didn't want to.
I don't know. I don't mind. And I think YouTube just doesn't want you to do it within the first minute or two. I think that's
okay.
That's
then I'll just.
I think that's the late. I have to update my study on how this works, but but no, that to me. So I love that, and it's in my notes also that he's very exactly what you said. He's very clear that the colonial question, the national question, has to be dealt with first, and then they will have to address themselves to the class issue because. And that armed struggle is necessary.
Yep.
So the book explains in detail, and this is what I thought was also important about the history that recounted here, that before we have the moment in 2026 that we have now, we have this long history, even before the establishment of Israel proper, of all this struggle, the suppression of the assassination of labor organizers.
Yes.
That he talks about, You
Right.
have, he talks about the feudal bourgeoisie of the Palestinians and how they were treacherous. I mean, so he's very clear. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a nationalist. I want my people to be free, but this is why we have to have a class. Because he's like, and we can go and find it, but I think he says like 50% of the land that the Zionists got was sold to them by the feudal Palestinians.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, son, I mean, like you got, and that's what I did like about Palestine 36, and you see it in the film. And I admit I'm part of those conditioned to forget these things or to not think of it, but that there were these attempts at civil society and the Palestinian bourgeoisie sitting down and trying to sit down with the Zionists to
Many times.
And it's like, and to see them have their own fantasies. No, we'll be able to do this, and then we'll be able to retain our land and keep our money, and our position will be protected even as the Zionists come in. And then you could see them start, as Kanafani's talking about in the book. Wait a minute, the Jews keep coming.
Yeah.
Like there's another influx of Jews, and it's like, and then you start to see them get a little more nervous, and then he breaks it down and shows step by step. And this is why there had to be and has to be armed struggle. Because they break it down. The Zionist movement just breaks down every layer of resistance. The liberal form, the can we just get along form. We'll do a sort of settler agreement with you. You let us keep a little bit of our feudal stuff, and we'll let you take all the poor's stuff. And that they just break that down. They keep going and going and going all the way till you're penned in the open air prison of Gaza.
Right.
And Kanafani was saying that's why, and as I'm reading it, just like on Zionist literature, I'm reading this saying no fucking wonder he was targeted, because you cannot have 2026 happening without getting rid of this kind of an analysis, or at least you cannot you can't have him sitting around saying, hold up, this is it. And then because it's also, and I'll stop here, because this what they also don't like about him is that he is giving this honest, sober look at what settler colonialism and capitalism does to even Jews within the Zionist movement, and how it works against their own class interests, and how their own ruling elite takes advantage of them. So it's like, no, we need you back on that standard narrow nationalist, Palestinians hate Jews just in general, so that we can avoid our own contradictions, and then focus on our own contradictions and get our own community back on waving their own flag and attacking you.
No, to be honest, like, I love that, because the other thing about him that you said, it was about the feudal oligarch stuff, right? Which is important, because I make these arrows butting against each other every time it comes up, because he mentions how when they were playing the game of working with the Zionists, they were doing it because they were feeling certain pressure of, well, we can't go all the way with the nationalism that we need. So that's what I think of. Like what Ghassan Kanafani is saying, there is a nationalism, but that nationalism is this version that I'm suggesting in my text. He doesn't say outright, but he's suggesting it, right? Because it's still nationalism. They don't want that nationalism. So they're feeling pressure to get, because some of them who assassinated the Palestinian labor guys was the Arab rulers, some of the the kings of Transjordan, who was making an attempt to take over parts of it, like working with Israel to be like, hey, we'll get some of our poors, you keep your poors, and we'll make a deal. So they either handed them over when the revolution, the armed revolution started, they handed some over, or they just killed them. So that was the other element that's so fascinating. But then what's interesting to that point, what kept getting happening was that they but they still failed to understand they were out of step with history, because constantly the violence was not abating until, of course, the extreme violence of the Zionist paramilitary, which was on a different scale. But until then, they were now like, it just speaks to how elites themselves, to everyone listening, are sometimes the dumbest people you can find. Right? Because they were like probably sitting in their chair, having, sipping some tea, looking at the hills and being like, I did it. I got a good deal. The Zionists are going to come back to me and we're all going to be happy. I'm pretty sure some of them were sincerely going back to their communities of peasants, because he also says a lot of Palestinians are peasants still, and saying, listen, everyone, we did it. Everyone's just sitting there. Did what? It's like, we gave up only 30% of the crops. And it's like, what? You gave up 20% the other year. So what's interesting is constantly there's this momentum towards the inevitable, towards that clash. And they had to sort of keep up. And because at the end of the day, to your point, when they got penned in, which was too late, but they were moving that direction, but with their dumbass, they were like this reminds me of what we're talking about with Black, Brown, Asian leaders who might be sincere. I think a lot of them are insincere at this point, but they might be sincere. It doesn't matter. Their analysis is invalid. It's foolish. It's ghoulish. It is out of step with history. And that's the brilliance of this book. He's not being, like you said, he's being sober. He's not being like mean or catty. Like there's an interesting thing at the beginning of the intro. I forgot who wrote the intro. Leon Sima Fulehen. I'm really bastardizing Arab names, but she says, interestingly, that the Jewish working class at that point when he was writing this book hated him, even the left. So he could have gone on even more in and been like, forget all of them. I don't really see a point, because they hated him. Because they hated him just like you said, or you were intimating, the Southern white working class would have hated anybody Black in Jim Crow South who'd be standing on the stage, I'm sure, and be like, hey, we all are working. They're like saying something awful and being like, we're just going to kill you. That is exactly what's happening. But still, he pursued analysis, because at the end of the day, he also didn't want those idiots to muck up what's history. He wanted to say, hey, you guys are also out of your tradition, your claimed tradition. The Palestinian communist movement, which he does criticize for being not too Arab enough, being too quote unquote European and Jewish, at bare minimum, they were trying something, even though they were kind of falling over themselves a little too late. So I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was brilliant how, and one last thing, sorry, there's the chapter on intellectuals. I didn't know this history about how, to your point about civil society existing, he keeps insisting how important Palestine is to Ottoman government before, and how Palestine was to intellectuals from the region coming there. There are a bunch of universities, intellectual hubs, and he says, I can't pronounce it correctly. So there's the Nakba, obviously, the catastrophe, but there's also the Arab cultural resurgence that was happening at this point. Cultural, that was called a Nada, Nahda. I'm going to use that in a poem or something, just because it's like he talks about that. And that's also important too. The Zionists did not have culture. The Zionists just had pure violence. So that's another thing I kept, because to your point, and we can get into it, the intellectual class was interesting. They did produce some very intense poetry. To your point, I'll read it later because I don't want to talk too much, but that section so he goes through the working class, he goes through the peasant class, he goes through the intellectual class, and then finally for the last 40 to 50 pages, he talks about the revolution. So yeah.
I noted, this is one of my favorite parts from that section that you were talking about on the
that's the one. That's
the poem here. So
his response.
So he and I'm forgetting, what was a short time before this, on March 28th, 1920, al-Bustani had himself led a demonstration which chanted a song that he had composed himself. He was summoned to the inquiry, and the following appears in the records of the inquiry conducted by the public prosecutor. Public prosecutor: statements have been made that you were carried shoulder high, and that you said to the people who were following behind you, "O Christians, O Muslims," the accused. Yes. Public prosecutor: and you also said, "To whom have you left the country?" The accused. Yes. Public prosecutor: then you said, "Kill the Jews and unbelievers." The accused: no, that violates the meter and the rhyme. I could not have said that. What I said was both rhyming and metrical. It's called poetry. And I just thought, of course, this is...
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
Now you correct me if I'm wrong, because as I'm reading it, he's it's not that I deny the claim or the philosophy of the claim. I just wouldn't have said it that way because it doesn't rhyme. It doesn't. Kill the Jews and unbelievers is not poetic.
I just love. No, I got that feeling too. But he also, I think, what Kanafani also says, there's. So this section is about all the poets who have come out. So he says how the economy and the political situation creates a type of poetry that people long for, and the poetry itself becomes a form of information. So the poets themselves actually are informing the masses about Lord Peel and the Balfour Declaration and all these meetings that are happening, because they are technically the intellectuals who have some privilege. So they're doing that with their poetry. And this guy too, he actually has another statement where he talks about, or someone of his peer class said that they include the Jews. To your point, they say the patriotic Jews who will fight with us. So I definitely think he's also being a little tongue in cheek, but I also think he's basically saying, you guys have no sense of rhyme. You guys have no sense of music, no sense of culture, no sense of like creativity. And I can just picture him, maybe I'm being stereotypical, but growing up, I've seen this, like, maybe a cigar, a smoke, who knows what he's allowed, but maybe afterwards getting some tea. And again, like, that's the real energy. I feel like he just knows that history is on my side. The beauty of this land is on my side. I know what art is, and art is humanity. So this is like also speaking to, and it's also very like real. Like, honestly, this is what a lot of Palestinians have to deal with, even if their meter and rhyme is quite beautiful. In fact, their struggle is beautiful, and yet it gets reduced to what? A CNN clip of like, oh, so you want to kill the Jews. And it's like, never said that, didn't say that. In fact, your side said that more often than we do. We just want our land, So I thought that was also so amazing to me that because the thing is, he's doing all this archival work, and he's spending time with it where he's noticing things that he just finds are like so relevant. And it's relevant, sadly, for decades to come. His wife, I think, is from Denmark. So he also has in this other collection of writings a media study of Denmark, because he visited Denmark.
Wow.
Yeah. So I haven't read that
I didn't
yet.
even know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has a media study of Denmark. If anyone corrects me, my bad. But I know his wife is European, and his wife got to know him through a conference in Yugoslavia. The good old days when conferences meant something. But self-care. But the point is, he got to know her. She fell in love with him, and it's really beautiful because she even says in one of the intros for Zionist literature that it was very clear that every line he wrote was for her. It was just very beautiful. And then he goes to Denmark and she introduced him to all these labor activists and people who just don't know what's going on. And he has a media study. But so anyway, media is a very big part, I think, of his analysis, clearly, with the Zionist literature. Like, he's also saying, hey, this is when it started, when people are like, oh, so you said rise with the Christians, rise with the Muslims, and then you said kill them. It's like, no, dog, I'm a poet. Like, I wouldn't even
say it like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it like that.
Because the way I read it, it was like, I might mean it, but I wouldn't say it like that. That's crass.
I think what you would say too is like, because in that same chapter, they say the patriarch Jews rise up against the colonizer. They're very specific about what they're saying.
No, you're right.
Describe them as Europeans,
Yeah, that's why I was saying that I felt like he was being nicer to to the Zionists and to Jews than I was in my reading, because I'm reading it like, why are you being? No, he's just being analytical and honest and principled.
I just want to say,
go ahead.
I don't mean to cut you, but I get you, because as a Hindu, I practice with. I think someone mentioned maybe Chitimacha. They understand, like Kali, severed heads. It's a different kind of Hinduism. I like that, but I feel the same way about Brahmin. I'm part of the Brahmin caste, unfortunately. And I feel the same way. When I read something, they deserve to go. Let's just put it lightly. But I feel the same energy when I'm reading certain things and my girlfriend shows me, I'm like, oh, that guy's a Brahmin. I don't give a F about what they think. So I understand that energy. I get it.
And it's just like, because sometimes I want, and I admit it, sometimes I just want the smoke and I just want to read just hostility. But that's why I think, but that's the point of what our project is and all of our broader work. That's the whole point. It's okay to start there or recognize we're in that moment, but we can't stay there as we're trying to perform an analysis. And that's what Kanafani, I think, is demonstrating perfectly.
Yes.
It's clear I have an unending hostility to the Zionism stuff, but I got to perform an analysis for my people so that we can move. And in that regard, we need to recognize, as has been done historically, that there is a class and a national and even an ethnic component to this thing that needs a little more nuance than just a broad they all gotta go. So yeah, anyway, but yeah, yeah, I just was acknowledging that in that moment I was like, man, because he's, and then I also like that in that section also he's pointing out that so the note I made to myself was in that section was that the point being that this is why, and I'm not surprised to hear that he ended up writing more about this, but this is why I and some others have this particular approach to what media and pop culture, what role they play in this process. Because from my vantage point, particularly in the 2026 United States context, the settler colonial media environment has adjusted itself to address itself to the problems from its perspective raised by Kanafani in that section. That, as he points out, as I'm reading it, like a lot of the art that was creating this new popular culture he's describing was as it says here, the development of a certain popular culture was very significant. It represented a certain awareness that existed in rural areas despite the widespread literacy and despite widespread illiteracy, and awareness that was spurred by the rapidly developing economic and political reality. Popular poetry in particular reflected a growing concern on the part of the rural masses over the course of events. This spontaneous awareness led to the spirit of mobilization in the villages. Then, as he says, the majority of urban intellectuals, for their part, were of a feudal or commercial petty bourgeoisie class affiliation. So my point was that our media environment in 2026 that helps produce all this mythology around financial literacy, buying power, Black, Asian narratives, et cetera, and so forth, was constructed in part as a response to that reality, that if left unchecked, even the illiterate rural masses who were colonizing are going to produce an art that is reflective in a critical way of what they're experiencing. We can't have that. We can't have a popular culture among the oppressed that is encouraging them to rebel. So we have to involve ourselves in producing the popular culture that we will impose on them, so that it will reduce the likelihood of poetry evolving like that, certainly becoming effective in the community and encourage. Because what Kanafani is showing is that the people on their own, recognizing their oppression, started producing art that said, "Now, damn that." And meanwhile, they're doing it in almost response and reaction and resistance to the majority of urban intellectuals who are of a feudal and commercial petty bourgeois class affiliation. And I just love that he kept bringing that back up in various ways. That yes, Zionism is a mess. The Brits, the Eastern European, all of it is a mess. But we really have this within our national issue. We got this class problem that, again, as I'm relating it to our work here, is not being addressed properly. In fact, quite the opposite. We're ending up at a point where the poor are being encouraged to look at the bourgeoisie among us as aspirational. And that's yeah. So, and
also there's a like in that chapter he talks about, like throughout this text he's talking about on the Palestinian side. So he referenced how the intellectual class are really themselves a lot of, young men who got the chance to go to university. Many of them are relatively petite bourgeois families, so well-known scholars from families, and then also small business owners and such, or craftsmen. So the contradiction is, so the interesting thing though in his sober analysis, as you say, is that he does say that so they're kind of old school though, like how Italy, before Italy, you had the Medici family and stuff, like you had different families promote art, so that was kind of existing still in Palestine. And so with him, he was saying briefly it actually offered some opportunity for certain artists to just be completely artists and not have to work or be compelled to work as the workers and most Palestinians who are peasants. So in a weird way, it offered that old school kind of like, I'll sponsor you, you do your thing. But what's interesting about that is that during that time, though, as the poets began to like really reflect and inform what's going on before their eyes, because like to speak, if you don't mind, I just want to say a couple of lines that they were writing. Like, for example, to your point about selling the land, they at this point in time, the British are now really demanding the few newspapers they allow to publish poetry from Arabs, like this Iraqi guy, who are very like, peace, which basically says keep selling land to the Zionists, to the feudal people. And one of the poets, just want to reference who they are, Ibrahim Tukan, as early as 1929, so still a few years before the revolution pops off, he literally just says in the poetry, they sold a country greedy for gold, but it was their homeland that they sold. They'd be forgiven had they been forced by hunger, but by God they had not thirsted a day nor hungered. And then one of them referenced Gandhi at some point, like making a little bit of a joke, saying at least Gandhi, I guess, had food to give up, but the food of their soul they give. And then he said, have you come to visit Alaska Mosque, or have you come to bid farewell before it is lost? So this was happening. And then over time, though, the feudal lords began to shift because they're also being bought out. So they are facing the national question. And that's when the poets are still doing the work they need to do, but they get exhausted out. So it's sober analysis. It's not necessarily saying the poets chose to, they never not existed. They obviously continue to exist. Palestinian history is that, but there is an economic and political analysis to how colonialism began to shrink the pond of resource, and really made it also collectively hard for more of these poets to exist. Because without the nationalism, right, of Palestine, and the feudal lords being reduced to, like you said, being penned in as well, they don't have the same amount of resource to let a poet just be a poet anymore. So I found that extremely fascinating. He was able to, like, again, connect all of this, the intellectuals, to the economic question. It's not just a complete choice. It's really about, to what we said last week about Zionist literature and with Boots Riley and others, like this connection of like, well, how much can we say a director can do, and how much should they be able to do, and all these different questions. I have my own thoughts about it. I don't think Boots Riley should be accepting money like that. I think he's fine. But there is an important economic question about what we're even allowed to do in a colonial context. Like, what can we actually do? Like you said many times before, in the YouTube streets, right? I think I referenced to my partner in the last episode we did. I mean, usually our episodes get like 2,000 views, 2,500. I really did feel like the last one would go higher, but there was a weird moment where it wasn't going up. I noticed it. And I was thinking, like, that's it. Allegedly. But I was noticing certain things about the episode that in other episodes it would like go up by 100 or 200 maybe very easily, and then it would start to climb over time.
Yeah, I'm never entirely sure. I've actually tried to put in some research on how this all works and to see what's most effective, and it really is kind of arbitrary, and it in many ways depends on what advertisers want, and how they feel. So yeah, so that's why everybody like, share, subscribe, make sure that you are subscribed, make sure that you have the bell rung. And that's why you have to do more to help get these videos out. You gotta do that extra mile. Chidi Maka is like the #1 promoter of these programs. You know, more people should be doing that. But anyway, and then, by the way, I Love Boosters was so great. I just hear a Boots Riley call out, right? So Uninformed Opinion, welcome to the platform. I think I saw that you are a new member. Yes, indeed. Welcome. And I hope it doesn't dissuade you from joining the platform to hear me say that I do not agree with you. And in fact, what I was going to say is, to Sudip's point, if you're going to take the money, man, you got to, a budget is not an automatic solution for a story, and for writing, and for choices made with, plot points and et cetera and so forth. So I'm trying to wait till more people see it, and for some of us to get a round table together, maybe to talk about it. We definitely need to talk about it. But I can't say that I agree with Uninformed Opinion on this one. But I'll just leave it there. I'm gonna leave it there for now and encourage people. I think the film should be supported. I don't have a problem with that. I also think you mentioned him too, May, a little while ago. We all need to be supporting his new film, 100%. and his work. So we got to get more on that.
And this one thing,
yeah,
I mentioned caste, and just people were asking questions what that is, sort of. So Brahmins are at the top of the Indian
right.
caste system. So I'm allegedly I'm at the top. I do get a lot of benefits for that. Even in the U.S. context, there's a lot of temple stuff that goes on. Who can go in, but it is skin tone. It's not based on skin tone. Like you can find castes in South India, people there are much darker. Just giving a reference. But also, I think Modi is not Brahmin, so there's upper caste, which doesn't have to be all Brahmins. But you also have the shopkeeper. It's dumb as heck, and it's the stupidest system you can devise. And it is a that's for sure. And then also, it is a system that needs to burn. And I was just referencing because I feel the same way as you, as do my parents, whenever I see a certain group, or because with Kashmir. That's a settler colonial situation. And, there's been instances where the Kashmiris have used violence. It's complicated, but I'll just say this. My heart doesn't sing or bleed so much about the Indian occupation at all. And the way that the Indian media describes the occupation is disgusting. And there's some not Bengali, sorry, we're not there. There have been some situations with Brahmins here and there, but just to say, if you're a group of people who are taking over another person's land, the majority of whom, right, Kashmiri Hindus are Hindus, but Kashmiri, but I don't know, you're going to get some smoke in terms of how you're being treated, by the majority of people who don't want to deal with it. And the majority of Muslims in Kashmir were mainly part of a class of people and caste of people who are workers and laborers. So I want to shout out Kashmir as well, because it's a 1-to-1. And India right now and Israel have really best bud situations in terms of resource. Israel sends a lot of drones in Kashmir. Kashmir is very heavily policed.
Droned up, yeah.
Yeah, they're droned up. So, Israel again, and that's the other thing, the intellectual thing. The intellectual is needed, like you and I, but it'll hit, like I was saying, it'll hit a wall, because every intellectual class needs still a political force to win. So what we're thinking about is we're fighting the financial literacy force with what we know, fire with fire, but ultimately the winning of everything is going to take place through some struggle. Like actual
absolutely,
yeah. So
I just want to be clear. I don't count
I know
what you and I are doing right now as struggle.
No, I don't.
This is not. I know you weren't saying that. I was just because I know others might feel like they're doing that when they engage.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
No. We just having a good time making an analysis, having a conversation with our friends in the chat. This is not political struggle right here.
Right. And that was more for the other people, because there's a blooming a network of podcasts and YouTubers now, Hassan and everyone, and I get the feeling sometimes that they think they're fighting every time they start streaming. They're like, I gotta go live and for the fight. Right. And I'm just eating cereal that's non-carb, and I'm just trying to debate with my diabetes, and I'm like, I'm excited for talking with Jared Ball, that's about it. I'm just in the corner somewhere. I have no idea what's going on. So I just want to reference that, because at the same time they do obscure, because they're sometimes annoying. They do obscure the need for intellectualism, but people get annoyed about it because they see what they see as people who are high flying on their kite of like what they think they're doing. But what he's proving, because he made a whole chapter on intellectualism, that is still important. That's all I'm saying. So I get you. This is not what we're doing.
No actual ICE agents into the harbor, because we are a nonviolent movement, but we are here symbolically throwing 342 pounds of ice into the harbor.
Is that real?
So Two Black shared it with me yesterday in our conversation, and I put the link in the show description to that show. So I would always keep it. We got to keep that handy. So I want to make sure I know that Sudip and I are not throwing bags of ice into the river right now. We're not even at that level of struggle. We at best, that's all we're doing. We are not equating this to real struggle. Sudip hasn't seen it. He's struggling with it.
Actually,
and I love how he did that. He's like liberals versus the communists are like, what? What is that? So that's why Kanafani is so important.
Yeah.
Because he's saying the analysis can't lead you to throwing bags of ice into the water. The analysis needs you to lead you to something else. So that's oh my God, that was hilarious. That was hilarious. Yeah, that was a live run for Sudip. He wasn't ready for that. We had no pre-show prep on that one. I just said, I
think it's the music too.
The
It's
music, the pan flute.
Yeah. And she just, look. I'll do.
We can't because of our politics. We're non-violent. We can't throw ice agents, but we will throw 342 pounds of ice. That shit is hilarious.
I have to be honest.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I don't mean to cut. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that Two Black made a good point. Like, you think about all the physical energy that goes into getting 300 pounds of ice.
That's true.
Physically delivered to the edge of a bridge and then dumped over. It's like, that's why I was like yesterday, I was like, you might as well swing on somebody for all that physical energy. Like you might as well, it's like that's how you're going to expend. That's a lot of ice. Anyway, go ahead.
That gave me a headache.
Right on time.
God.
You and Solala.
Oh
got
wow,
from that.
It's just the anger that when you get a back headache on your neck, just the anger and shoulders. I have to be less stressed, but I'm just stunned because.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean
No, it's okay. No. I also follow that guy's page. I think he's great, but he damn, what the hell? Can you imagine being someone in ICE and you got a tiny window and you're peeking through and you say, oh, there's a lot of people coming. This is great. I've been on a hunger strike. And they're like, bags of ice. He's like, oh, he's going to throw it at the ice?
No, listen.
No, it's in the river.
Look, I admit where I am because years ago we were talking about this when the now late Troy Davis was awaiting execution and everybody was doing the visual outside the prison and they played one of his last statements and he was saying, so he had one of those standard really nice, powerful, don't worry about me type of statements and I just kept thinking absolutely not. That's why I can't be a martyr or a hero or any of that because my last statement would have been you motherfuckers better be breaking me out of here. If I look outside my prison cell and you were standing out there with a goddamn candle singing songs, I'm gonna be pissed and trying to spit on you from my jail cell. That's it? A song and a poem and a candle? You motherfuckers better there's no rope to my cell. There's nobody blowing a hole in this thing. I was like, somebody better be getting me. So yeah, I can't.
I grew up in a certain home where I would say my parents would be like, what do you mean? You want to, that's not his, I'm just referencing. I would want someone, I would go to the mat for them. So I would hope that they would do it for me.
If you're not going to get me out, then stay the hell home.
I would
don't be outside. Don't be out there singing and poetry and humming and damn sure don't be praying. You better be if I see you, it better be part of a plot. Seriously,
I agree.
In one of his last books, Russell Maroon Schultz, the late great political prisoner, he said that. He said something like, I'm from the era where we broke out of prison. He was like, he said he had a line in his book, where is the rope that you're supposed to be throwing up here to get me out? Enough of it. Not one more kicks free GoFundMe, no more change.org. Don't you dare put no change.org petition for Jared on there. You better be getting me the hell out of here.
You're sending out beautiful statements like the one the guy's like, he's like, did you say murder all the people? And you're like, no, it doesn't fit the rhyme. And then everyone's like,
taking although I'd have been panicking. I'd have been like, yeah, I said it. Get me the hell out of here.
No, I it's funny. My partner, I want to give her, I love her so much because she's very real about these things. And she says, Sudip, you have so many disabilities now. You're so sick. Don't do anything crazy. And then I'm like, I don't leave that much. I only go to class to teach and I try to walk and it's tough. I'm still getting better. Neuropathy is no joke. Your nerve damage is really painful. But I remember one time she had a conversation with me and it was real. She looked at me. She said, if they knock on her door like ICE or something, and they're looking for someone, and I'm outside the door because I'm just coming back from something. You bet. She was very, I'm using choice words here, but she was like, you better not open that door. Let them just take me, and then you can find me later. But do not dare open that door. I was like, but it's you. And she's Italian, she's white. And I was like, but it's you. And she's like, what are you talking about? It's you. Let them take me, and then you will hand. So I was like, because the point is, like, that's a reality check that you need. You need people in your life who are not going to sing you songs, but are just going to be like, listen, we know what's up, but also there is a survivability side of it too, of just like, listen, I'm out here because at the end of the day, I know this for a fact. If I don't have my medicine, I'm gonna be so effed in so much pain. And so if I'm in that much pain, like you said, I'm gonna be spitting on everybody because I'm in pain. I'm not gonna be looking for a poster of myself. If I see a poster of myself outside with a smiling face, I'm like, burn that down. Like, I'm dying inside. And that's the thing with the ice thing. It's like, why even show up with the bags of ice? It's actually quite offensive. Like, I think there was one clip someone played of some people. Again, this is just a few because so many protests happened. You're always going to find a few. But I think there was a couple who were like, they wear costumes and they dance. And it's like, why? That's so stupid. Like, you think this is how it works? Like, even if you don't agree with the more violent method or the non-violent method, don't forget there are human beings in there who are probably still panicking and are getting abused daily, getting denied medicine, getting denied, actual food. The food they probably feed them is slop, maybe pissed in or spat in, as we know from reading so much stuff. I've never been in that situation. So it's like, yeah, I get it. So I'm just saying you need people like that in your life, not like someone who's like, well, Jared, if you're in there.
No, and let me just be clear. Like, I'm not begrudging what anybody who is locked up is actually saying. So, like, if whatever they want, do whatever they want. I just imagine
but it's about
that's
us.
not what I'm saying. For me, I'm not that principle. I'm not that decent a person. I'm like, you got to get me the fuck out of here. Otherwise, go away. Otherwise, I don't want to hear from you. Like, you can't just, I don't want to, like, I can't. So listen, I don't, before we, go too far, I at least want to, I definitely at least want to come back to the part of the book where he's talking about the revolt, but I'm going to skip because I just found this other thing that at the end of the book, this was another part that I thought really related to what I would like to be doing for our project. At the end of the book, there's this section where they include this letter from Gaza by Ghassan Kanafani. And I'll admit, I was, at least in this version that comes with the online, I don't know if they actually put it in the book, but I thought this was really, really powerful and was kind of messing me up. So that's why I'm glad I'm skipping to this part. I want to make sure we get to this as well. The long story short is that he's writing to his friend ultimately at the very end of his life. And it's him saying, I'm not going to join you at the university in California. I know that was our plan. We had it all mapped out, our lives, our career. We've been accepted. Where we got, and he's saying, I know you're going, like, but at the last minute, he's telling him, I'm not going to go. And the point of that he's saying is, I got to stay here and fight. I can't go on to the bourgeois life that we had planned to have. So he says, I've also received news that I've been accepted in the Department of Civil Engineering at the University of California. And then he goes on to say, I feel no hesitation at all. I'm pretty well positive that I've never seen things so clearly. But no, my friend, I have changed my mind. I won't follow you to, quote, the land where there is greenery, water, and lovely faces, as you wrote. I'll stay here and I won't ever leave. And then this was the line. I am really upset that our lives won't continue to follow the same course, Mustafa, for I can almost hear you reminding me of our vow to go on together and of the way we used to shout, we'll get rich. but there's nothing I can do, my friend. Yes, I still remember the day I stood in the hall of the Cairo airport, pressing your hand and staring at the frenzied motor at the moment everything was rotating in time and the ear-splitting motor, and you stood in front of me, your round face silent. And then he goes on, but this was the point. He's saying, like, he made the conscious choice to resist the imposed narratives that you and I are responding to in 2026 that tell you don't need political struggle. You certainly don't need a radical political struggle. You just need to go get a degree, invest in a business, circulate your dollar, pool your resources, get rich, and then you can buy the politics and the politicians like the Jews and the Asians and the whites, and then enter the political arena. And Kanafani is saying in real time in his life, no. And I mean, I admit that, like, I was like, as I sit here, my big old 54-year-old looking at retirement from the life that he rejected to stay and fight. And I was like, you know, I know we're all made by our times and all of that, and I don't, you know, with all blah, 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 but I couldn't help with the comparison. I was like, but that's why I'm sitting here, full professor, eyeing down retirement, that sun on the horizon back there, setting. That's my career, happily. I'm like, let it go. I'm like, I can't wait. And he was like, nah. I didn't get rich, admittedly. You know, I don't know what he would have gotten as an engineer coming out of Cal, whatever. But as a little old HBCU Black Studies media professor, I didn't get rich, but I also didn't get blown up in a car, knock on wood. And I'm sitting here, as I said, you know, staring down the end of a career that he said, nah, man, nah, homeboy. And so yeah, I just thought that was really powerful, and salute to Kanafani, and just outright saying, no, I'm not doing it. So yeah, but if you wanted to say anything about that or pick something else out, then yeah, go ahead.
No, it's I do want to go through some of the parts of the book just to lay out what are the things he says about the economic situation and what led to the revolution finally. And of course, I really do want to highlight the complete through line between British colonialism and Zionism. The complete through line. There's no gap. It's just one and the other. But just want to say to the Kanafani, Ghassan's writing too, like, that's a very beautiful, I don't know, I'm not trying to get, it's like very beautiful, like, I have some friends I grew up with, like, I, you know, as most of us when we grow up, especially through COVID, I think there's like not an well, the male epidemic or whatever bullshit, but there's an epidemic of people growing up and not having enough friends because of how our lives are of the times and how neoliberalized they are. But I have some really close friends I grew up with. And you know, thinking about a gap, like them leaving forever almost and going to a place that, you know, I never want to go to. It's also very striking how he pays attention to the small things. Like he says, your round face. It's like kind of, you know, interesting. And I don't know, something about it just shows you also how beautiful his writing was. Like he was so talented. Even a scene like that, I think a lot of writers would fail to make a scene like that, let alone in a letter or in a book. You know, they try, but I think because I've been reading more of his like I said, of his novels. I have another one here. I just got All That's Left to You that I want to read next. And I've just been fascinated by him because his oeuvre is long and he clearly just had a sense of humanity. As his wife said, he stayed. And at the end of the day, his career, though, was still quite good. Like, he did become an editor of all these great Arab, Pan-Arabist, and finally PFLP located newspapers. And so he was relevant still in his own way. He chose, in some sense, the career that was meant for him, right? For him to actually sustain it's about sustaining your soul, right? If you can live with a few decisions, maybe, but he clearly couldn't live with that, leaving into the belly of the beast. And so he still chose a really, in my opinion, a more valuable life. No offense to his friend, where he's writing newspapers, making freaking programs, statements for the PFLP, to the point, like you raised, that they targeted him. I know it's a very bizarre kind of bizarre kind of way of saying praise, but he still lived a very relevant, powerful life. And he was just a powerful writer. To your other point too, it's not just about him having the analysis, the way he puts it together. I think the reason why they targeted him is also because it was him, because he was a Palestinian who believed in nationalism and who believed in a certain kind of Marxist-Leninism that was anti-colonial. Because, I think I said this last time with Norm Finkelstein, who I do like. I have his work. I know Deculturization does a really good job of breaking him down, and I listen to most of those streams, and I find it quite useful and angering what he says eventually. But to be honest, it is important about the messenger, and I think in our current context, there's still a way where you can get a Kanafani analysis, not the kind, to a certain kind of person that won't come off as threatening because of said person. And then you have Kanafani, who is the person, a Palestinian who believes in all these really quote unquote radical things. And I think that is what also got him kind of in heavy water.
But even before my turn away from Finkelstein a couple of years ago, at his best, Finkelstein has never been close to Kanafani.
I did not,
politically or otherwise. So, like,
I agree.
At his best, the Holocaust industry to me was Finkelstein's best work. But it's not a Marxist analysis. It's not a radical analysis. It's just an honest look at. It's not I mean, it's talking about the elite survivors of the Holocaust, but it's not really. It's not a class analysis in any meaningful. It's not a so I just want to be and so because Finkelstein and I had that little bit it didn't rise to an actual argument, but a disagreement for sure, where he said and doubled down on this idea, saying that Edward Said again was wrong, and then changed his mind at the end of his life, off the record apparently. That is, Said changed his mind in his initial disagreement with Finkelstein that Jews should not be the leading voices condemning Israel. It's important for Palestinians to be having their own voice. And Finkelstein, even in our interview, was like, no, and that's wrong. It's tactically wrong. And Said ended up agreeing with me at the end of his life, et cetera, and so forth. But I don't agree with that. And then that you need tactically Jewish voices to be leading in any way the argument against Zionism, although they should be involved. But I also wanted, and then again, I wanted to clearly distinguish between the politics in the writing between Finkelstein and Kanafani. So, in other words, and I'm just not aware if there are Jewish writers today condemning Zionism at the same level of political analysis of Kanafani. I'm sure there have to be. I just don't know who they are.
No, there is.
And it's
I think
definitely
there is.
Not Finkelstein.
No. What I'm saying is kind of that point, though, to be honest. Like, I totally agree with you. It's more like it's the messenger, because he is also representative of these very deep, complex, and blunt analyses that is not seen in even how, because there's a level of Kanafani's critiques that is so relevant today that I hear from other people now, and he was ahead of the time by a billion years in my head because he understood analysis. But what I was saying is exactly that. I totally agree. I'm not arguing Finkelstein, but I do think that there's a certain kind of attack on him, on Kanafani, that happened because he was this Palestinian voice who was not beholden to the feudal oligarchs of Jordan, and then later on the military generals who were not Nasser after him, who were saying, you know what, we'll make peace. He was not into that. I mean, I think this book, when he started writing it, it was around the time of the Cairo Agreement, they said, which was the time when Nasser, this is after 67, so in 68 or 69, this is in the book, he asks for Yasser Arafat, and one other person from Lebanese, he's Lebanese, who they made the Cairo Agreement to now officially sanction the right for violence, armed revolution by the Palestinians, which goes to your earlier point too, by the way, which is how many years they tried to do, quote unquote, the right thing, the peaceful thing. Like, certain people have this belief, even those who may agree or don't know anything, they have this belief fed to them by the media, hence Kanafani's rightful obsession over it, that somehow the Palestinians and European Jews were constantly just killing each other, when in fact the Palestinians rose up, got suppressed and killed viciously, and then for several decades after, we're kind of just hoping the Arab armies could do their work. And then finally in 68, 69 is when they officially declare armed struggle. So even that required a level of revolutionary patience, but the inversion of that, right? They unfortunately maybe waited too long. And that's one of the things even in some liberal historians like Khalid Rashidi says in his own book. He kind of mentions how they waited too long in actually formulating a real revolutionary structure, because Nasser then dies, I think, a few years after that from medical complications. So, and then comes in Anwar Sadat and other people who are just like, we're ready to just get the Sinai back. We were just ready to keep our own. But Kanafani was against all that mess. He was against all that mess, and that's what makes him even a difficult person to raise today, is what I want to say. Like, I don't think he gets even enough shine in the current climate among leftists, too. Like, some people declare it on your show because your show is amazing, but I still have not met enough people, black, brown, and other white, black, brown, white, who are even on our wavelength in some degree, but who don't mention him enough. And when they do, it's about these quotes from TV shows, but not necessarily the depth of analysis that we've kind of had in only these works, which are very thin. Like, not to it's showing his conciseness, his cohesion.
Yeah, and I appreciate it too, because I can't you know, at the pace where and others are moving, I can't read these
oh yeah, same
long. So okay, listen, I need a bathroom break and to get another coffee. So I'm gonna set up a question for you that I'll be able to hear as you, so that if you don't mind. One question I have for you in the audience, I did want to raise, and then if you want to start bringing up some of the things you wanted to talk about, I'll catch back up here in a second. But on this page here, because you kind of just mentioned, so this is, what page is this? 59. You were talking about some of the ebbs and flows and of the history of the struggle, and he's talking about this point here just before the Second World War, where he says, in the midst of all this, the Palestinian national movement, which had been paralyzed by the subjective factors we have mentioned and the violent attacks launched by both the British and the Zionists, was in a difficult situation on the eve of the Second World War. The claims of some historians that Arabs, quote, stopped their revolt to allow the British to wage its war against Nazism are naive and refuted not only by the facts, but also by the fact that Haj Amin al-Husseini took refuge in Nazi Germany throughout the war. And then he just moves on. This was one, if there's a critique I have, this is like one critique that I have of this book. What is he talking about here? Like, what is this history? Or is he saying, then, this is where I was confused. Is he saying that Palestinians kept struggling at home, but also, like, I don't know enough about the figure he's talking about. Why was he taking refuge in Nazi Germany? How was he taking refuge? So is the argument that let me just stop there and I'm going to go to the bathroom, but I don't, yeah, help me out with that. And then please bring up anything else you want to get to, and I'll be back in a second. Thanks. You're muted. I don't hear you. Yeah, I was like, what happened?
Sorry.
I was like,
sorry. It's my mic. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think the main thing he's trying to reference there, because I think he mentioned other instances. I think the Mufti of Palestine also went to seek refuge in Nazi Germany, but he was, I think, in my mind, saying how there is a certain kind of positioning still that these people were basically, I think he was trying to say that they were not passive, and they were seeking support for their own mission in Palestine. And they were not just supportive of the British and lay down their weapons. I think that's what he was trying to say. And I do want to bring in the a little bit of like some Indian history. So in India too, when Gandhi was doing his thing, I guess I could describe it, there was a lot of uprisings in India throughout that period, like very brutal uprisings and quite bloody. One of which was the Indian Independent Army that was formed, and this was formed by Subhash Chandra Bose, who is Bengali, who was a leftist, like a socialist. And in fact, after India achieved independence, the Forward Bloc, which is his political party, joined with the Communist Bloc to form this electoral bloc that later on would, win elections in West Bengal for almost 40 years plus. But he did go to Nazi Germany to seek help against the British, because he viewed the British accurately as our own Nazis, as our own fascists. He, of course, got completely demoralized, I think, from his experience in Germany, realizing something was up. And then he decided to escape, because I think Nazi Germany wanted to keep him there for their own attempts to recolonize India, but under Germany. And he escaped in the submarine. This is like what my parents told me, so this could be all wrong, but I trust my parents. And then he went through Afghanistan, where he sought the help of local leaders who have a very, very strong history of protecting friends, especially friends who are Central South Asian. And then finally he returned to India, and then he went to Japan, to Imperial Japan, to get help for arms and weaponry. He eventually died in this mysterious plane crash. But anyway, I think that's what he's kind of like. There's a history of that, where you had certain colonialists who are seeking enemy of my enemy is my friend. But what I also read into that throughout the book was the limited, narrow view of the feudal movement. The feudal Kanafani was criticizing how the Palestinian nationalist struggle had been repressed by the Zionists and also reconfigured by the feudalists, who are not really radical. So basically he was constantly saying how they themselves are a force of people who were rather narrow in their worldview, because of course in his mind there were a lot of other Palestinians and Arabs who didn't go to Nazi Germany. They went to other places in the region and continued their fight. So that's the way I read it, was the limited worldview of the Palestinian leadership, but also showing that the Palestinian leadership were not just like agreeing with the British war in World War II either. That's the way I figured into it. And then also a couple of things I do want to raise about the book for everyone here is the book is, again, really short, and it has a lot of things that are quite important about also the ways in which the revolution began to percolate due to these economic constraints as well coming out. So that's the way I was thinking of it.
So first of all, thank you for that. And it reminds me of what Kwame Ture used to talk about, that when he would make the point that Gandhi, it was something more, he was critical of saying, what aided Gandhi's movement more than anything was the defeat of England in the Second World War.
Yeah.
And he would even say, to be provocative, Hitler was a great man. Not that he was good, but great in terms of his impact on world history. And he would point out, and then he would use that as a segue to say, without the struggle against Hitler, the British Empire would have continued to be as strong, and the struggle for liberation in India and other parts of the empire that, whose sun never set on it, whatever, would not have been as successful, because the British were weakened by their loss ultimately against the Germans. And so I could see from the Palestinian perspective, we got to get rid of these damn British. If the Germans are kicking their ass, so be it.
Well, the other element too about that is that it's a European civil war, how people should view it at times, it's not necessarily, and there was a lot, like even fiction novels. I think I forgot who I'm reading now, but he is, forget what part of Africa his writing is from. Malabar, but it's Zanzibar. And in his books, he references how a lot of people were just confused over what's going on in Europe again, and you get conscripted and whatever. But the other interesting thing to note is that I think also, to add to a little bit of that, what Ture was saying was the rise of the Soviet Union was quite powerful too. The rise of the Soviet Union was literally one of the major reasons why you had, not to give too much credit, like we're not trying to put a Grace Lee Boggs and a James Boggs saying Marx is is the only revolutionary that's ever existed in time, and Lenin was the only man who ever existed. We're not saying that. I'm not saying that. We are not saying it. But what I'm saying to Vijay Prasad's book, Red Star Over the Third World, materially it was important. Like materially, it was very key. So yes, the second civil war in Europe in the modern era was key, but I also think it was also important how the Soviet Union, became what it was and was now becoming an actual material force to give weapons and intellectualism to people who needed it. So I think that was really key too. But yeah, that was a funny, like those kind of lines are also very, like, it just takes you out for a minute, but you're just like, okay, because I also was thinking like, what the, like, what's going on? And then also he'd reference, I don't know, there's some interesting lines in here that are like that, but also other lines are just as powerful. Do you mind if I bring up another one?
No, go ahead. Please.
But speak on the Nazi
and take
front,
your time. Yeah.
This is what it reminds me of. So let's see, on page 70, but at the bottom, so this is 39. This is right around the time now where the Jewish paramilitary forces from Europe are totally now leading the way and exterminating and really becoming the main police force.
Wait, you have a page 70? I don't have a page 70. What's the?
Oh, I'll just read it. I think we have
bring
this.
it up.
Yeah. Well, it's called the Palestinian police headdress, or Australian. Look up Australian.
I don't remember that.
Maybe you have different books, but
there we go.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
this was so fascinating to me because, again, there's like moments like the other part where it says, in the early months of 1939, the British Army formed 10 well-armed Jewish settlement police units. Each of the units was given a Hebrew name, and their members were allowed to abandon the official Palestinian police headdress, the Kalbak cap, in favor of the Australian bush hat.
Right.
I don't know, just some nuggets in here. You're just like, damn, like,
to make them even more distinctive, as it says here.
Right, and more settler colonial, and just like, this is your civilization.
Wow. Right.
I thought lines like that, just like, I don't know, I put so many dots on. I was like, this is exceptional work. Like, even with the line like that, like, they literally are saying we are, because it goes to all these Israeli TikTokers who are like, well, we're the native people. Dude, you just literally replaced the hat with something from another place. But what's your connective tissue? We know what the connective tissue is. You're trying to emulate what they did. So I thought that was quite powerful.
Exactly. No, and it makes sense because that's, and as has been pointed out, I remember when Assata Shakur talked about how the New Jersey State Police adopted the uniform style of the stormtroopers, the Nazi stormtroop SS or whatever.
Yeah.
And and that's why Cecil Rhodes. That's why Herzl wrote to Cecil Rhodes, right? To say we're trying to be you, dude. We're trying to we're trying to imperialism like you, my guy.
Right.
But what else? What else did you want
I just wanted to say the book goes through all those different like layers of society, and by the time 36 is around, the working class of Palestine, like literally people working in businesses in the city, are now finally slowly being created. But what's happening is a lot of peasants, who are the majority of Palestine, they're losing their land completely. And then for the workers, they're now contending with Jewish only stores. So the labor movement begins to work with, so the antagonism for the peasants is the loss of land. So they are the bulk of the actual armed resistance, as he keeps saying, because like you said, they just knew one thing, which is the very material thing of losing your land. And the person who's supposed to be your tribal chief is telling you, nah, it's all good, and it's fine. So you're going to be like, I don't have land. So for the workers, though, even though they were small, because that's the other difficulty that he explains as a weakness, because the Palestinian Communist Party did not have enough workers. They should have been in the countryside more. They should have been doing more Arabization, as he was saying, which they wanted to do, which is very similar to Communist Party and Socialist Party members who are white by the turn of this Jim Crow era, not really getting their shit together to actually organize with black folks enough to get them into the ranks, right? To build that force they allegedly want. This was like a one-to-one kind of description. So even though a lot of Jews who are European are quite anti-Zionist because they're communists, they were still not able to understand the peasant class is where they should have gone to. But the workers themselves were losing out, because now you have also, I didn't know this, you had Jim Crow, like it was happening. Now you have the Histrodot movement, which is happening, where they are assassinating Jews who are anti-Zionist They're assassinating them to replace them, and then finally choosing to explain to the Jewish workers who are European of descent, Western Europe mostly at that point, saying to them, hey, what we need is a better economy, and that economy needs to be controlled by us. We've heard that lesson before, and we don't need Arabs working with us. They need to just stay away, and need to be a subclass of people we can bring in when we want to. So that's the pressure for them. And then finally, the feudal lords, like I said before, their dumbass was thinking, well, we can, play with the cards as they are, get a little something here and there. They were caught out of step. But again, the issue is the peasant class led the revolution. I just want to read the beginning part of the like one of the instances, because it was such a fun line where I just would love to write a story with that line in it, where he says, like, he's also saying how the starting of the revolution is quite complex. And there's no like one spark. It starts to accumulate. But there is a scene at the start in the very beginning of the revolution section at the bottom. He says the initial spark was an ambush carried out by a group of Arab militants. Yassine states that this was a Qassamist group, and al-Qassam was a famous leader at that time who got assassinated, and then his death was attended by all the poor of Palestine. So even against the feudal leadership who said, don't make this into a political thing, his funeral, they chose to, right? To your thing, we messaged each other about writing an article on revolutionary patience, because he mentions this. Al-Qassam did not also, this is another beautiful thing he says, these people who led the revolution did not just do it willy-nilly. Like, not to use a very white phrase, Al-Qassam went into the mountains, and they, I think, crossed paths with some British officers, and he told his men to stand down because they're like, we're not ready yet. We're not ready. So that's the brilliance of that too. Like, they weren't just out there being like quote unquote Arab savages and all this bullshit.
That's right.
They were thoughtful men. So he got killed, but this is amazing. So according to another historian, one of the militants, they take over a bus of 15. They held up and robbed the Jewish and Arab passengers of 15 vehicles traveling between two towns. And according to one of the historians, one of the militants gave a short speech to the passengers, the majority of whom were Arab still, in which he said that the revolution has begun, and quote, we are taking your money so we can fight the enemy and defend you, end quote. I just loved it. It was so...
No, and that scene is depicted in Palestine 36.
Oh,
like,
it is?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
You see them ride up on horses. They go onto the train or the bus. I can't remember, the train or whatever. They rob it, and they say almost that exact line. And he gives a kind of like, it's performed like that. He gives a kind of like, and you get it. Like, if I'm doing this, you might as well have a little fun in the moment.
Yeah.
He stands there. He's like, fear not, everyone. We are taking your money so we can fight your enemy.
Right.
And it's like, hell, because when I saw the movie, I always have that thought of, I always wonder if I were one of the people on trial with Rochelle McGee when Jonathan Jackson kicks in the Marin courthouse and throws a gun on the table and says, we're in control now. I'm in charge. What would I do?
Right.
Would I be the one to pick up the gun like Rochelle, or am I going to stay like, I forgot the other dude's name, because I think somebody stayed. Somebody was like, nah, I'm good. I'm gonna ride this thing out. And it's like, and I, so when you're sitting on the bus, you see the dude come in there and he's giving the speech. Part of me is like, I'm gonna get up and try to join you. Like, come on, you need somebody else. Like I'll ride off into the hills with you.
Right.
But yeah, that scene is enacted in the movie.
That's beautiful.
So, yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I love the energy of that line. You can tell from the line itself. And I think Ghassan is a novelist and a poet too. You can tell he picked this really great. I mean, it happened. He's not lying, but he picked a line where you can see, like, it is. And when we're saying performance, it's not like to belie the seriousness, but it is like, to be a revolutionary, you have to also perform a certain kind of level of seriousness and a level of trust and authenticity and all these different value systems. You can't just be walking around being like, not muttering to yourself, not doing anything that's epic. Revolution is epic and bombastic and freeing, and so you have to calculate that too. And so I love that. I don't know why, it was just so beautiful. He's like, I'm here to rob you so I can protect you. And then, at the end of the day, the Black Panther Party, I remember they used to shake down small businesses too, Black owned, and they would say similar things of like, listen, and they would be a little harsher, which I don't mind, but they would be like, your money needs to go to our fund so we can pay for these kids to get food. It's simple as that. And they would just be like, they would send people out there who could do a little of like a rough thing of that. Like, like, you got to do what we need to do. because and at the end of the day, revolution is about discipline. It's about the art of revolutionary authenticity, and also it's about like, yeah, you know, some shit's gonna go down, and you need to be available. You need to know what steps you need to take. But the other interesting thing about this, and this is going back to a class I'm teaching, these independent classes I'm teaching the next one on the concept of the anti-colonial guerrilla. And so we're going to go through the dialectical relationship of Vietnam, Algeria, and Guinea-Bissau, and how these movements succeeded, which is this relationship between not just violence for violence sake, but also governing. So there's also the other element that's there. It's like, you know, they're not just popping off, because the other thing that he's saying is that repeatedly the peasants were popping off. And then the sad part is we go into what's missing, right? And which is what happens to them, you know, to be corralled. One is the Jewish population, the European Jewish population is all in now and saying, this is our moment to shine. We can prove ourselves finally to the British. We're not completely their enemies. We can crack a few Palestinian heads, Jewish, Christian, Muslim mostly, or secular, however. We'll do it for you. We'll be the Jim Crow force. And then finally, the other functioning element that or malfunctioning element is that they did get exhausted. With the killing of the major leaders like Al-Qassam, with the literal handoff, capturing of other leaders and giving them to the Zionists and the British by so-called Jordanian forces, which is, go to hell for that. You're going to go to hell for that. I don't know how you can sleep at night doing that. And then also legitimately the complete lack of weapons. They just didn't have. And then the final thing that I was writing in my notes, the other thing, which is what Iqbal Ahmad says, unfortunately, they didn't have enough of a space to start out administrating the other side, because he found out that in the Vietnamese struggle, the Algerian struggle, and the Amilcar Cabral-led Guinea-Bissau, yes, it was violence to take out the French and the Portuguese, but every time they did that, they didn't just leave. They would position themselves in that area, and then they would start to govern it. Be like, hey, this is a taste of what could happen for the rest of the country. We're getting sources. The Palestinian fighters, many of them peasants, didn't have it because they lost the land. And then the feudal lords weren't going all in until the last moment when they're like, oh shit, I guess I should run to Nazi Germany. What do you, like, that just shows you also the last gasp of this sense of leadership. There was no leadership. So the peasants themselves, he said it, they got exhausted. He used that term. They became exhausted doing these hidden runs, these guerrilla activities, and then you're being surrounded by so-called Arab countries that are supposed to help you. Unfortunately, you know, they couldn't do the last thing, which is out maneuvering and out administrating the other side.
Absolutely. Another thing that he does in here that I relate to the work that we're doing is offer up again this clarity and sober analysis about both why the revolt happened and then why it failed.
Yeah.
So in part, I just wanted to note this section here, where he's talking about the intensity of the Palestinian national experience, which emerged since 1918, was accompanied in one way or another with armed struggle, which emerged in 1918 and was accompanied in one way or another with armed struggle. So that was also a point I wanted to just say, you know, as much as we may be uncomfortable with it, when people start going into these financial literacy claims and all this other kind of stuff about that's the solution to our problems, it's leaving out a lot. So if you want to make these comparisons to other communities, we have to also acknowledge some of what Kanafani is saying here.
100%. Yeah.
And then he says that the nationalist experience could not reflect itself on the upper structure of the Palestinian national movement, which remained virtually under control of semi-feudal and semi-religious leadership. And again, I can't help but look at the parallels to Black America in 2026, that the Black bourgeoisie, which does accompany this religious component, and then I would also equate it to these claims around having the appropriate mindset to access the forces in the universe that will allow us to achieve our higher stages of consciousness and achieve our financial liberation. And then he says that there are two primary related factors that help suppress this radical nationalism in the Palestinian struggle. The existence of an effective Zionist movement which gave the national challenge relative predominance over social contradictions. The impact of this challenge was being systematically felt by the masses of Palestinian Arabs, who were the primary victims of Zionist invasion supported by British imperialism. And then secondly, the existence of a significant conflict of interest between the local feudal religious leadership and British imperialism. Again, this is, I think, another important component that needs to be compared to what's happening here.
Yes.
That there's a settler colonial experience, an internal colonial experience happening here. That this black feudal religious leadership is attempting, is fomented and encouraged to be part of that imperialist process. And that this was consistently in the interest of the ruling class to promote and support a certain degree of revolutionary struggle, instead of being more or less completely allied with the imperialist power, as would otherwise be the case. The British imperialists had found in the Zionists a more suitable ally. So, one, in terms of what Kanafani is doing in the history of that region, I think this is important. Also, as I look at this ongoing problem of we don't have an analysis of Jews in this country or anywhere that he's including here, that I think speaks to this ongoing debate around, that I think is also encouraged, is U.S. or Western imperialism being run by Jews in service of Israel, or is Israel being run by Western imperialism in service of itself, despite its claims of having a concern for Jews and Israel, et cetera, and so forth. And to me, if I'm reading this correctly, Kanafani is agreeing with the former, if I remember my order. That is, that British imperialism is what was the material backing of this Zionist movement that gives the Zionist movement its effectiveness,
right,
and in controlling that region of the world for Western Empire. Once the British got weakened by the Nazis and the rest of their expansive empire, they said, we need to build up this internal Zionist movement to take over for us. And then Kanafani actually has a line in here, I think you mentioned it already, where the British are literally handing over Zionism to Israeli Zionists, to Jews, and then they're inviting more European Jews to come in to play that role, become the police force, the military force, and on and on and on. It goes to the point where we are today. Well, so yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, this is when the Haganah and all the Irgun and all the bullshit this is where, so he's saying, and I would love to go into also the revolutionary stuff that worked, but he is saying the foundation of the Nakba in 48 is formed through here. He literally says that, like, the Nakba would not have been possible without the suppression of the 36 to 39, especially the 38 revolution. And I wanted to read one other thing, because the weapons too, but it's like, again, when I heard about this book and I got really into his work more and more, I just related to exactly what you're saying, which is the mythology of success as well. Because, you know, Israel likes to promote it. Like they always say, like, look at our lives, look at our beaches, look at our, you know, wonderful society. And some people do take it even if they're anti-Semitic. Like there are a lot of Asians who are not Jewish. There are a lot of Jews, like West Asians, who are Jewish. There are a lot of Asians who are Jewish who weirdly will say anti-Jewish things about Jews, being like, oh, they're controlling, they're this. I've heard it everywhere with family members and such. But then they'll still land on this weird thing of saying, but look at what they did with Israel. They got, you know, solar panels. They got this, you know, that kind of thing. And it's like bewildering, because they also, some of the Israeli Zionists, a lot of them now, play it up, because it goes into the idea that it goes into our first book we read, which is this land was bereft of knowledge. It was bereft of literal buildings, just sand. And then we came and we let it blossom. We're the true people of that. But you know what happened? I know you know this, but you know what really blossomed was British fucking it up and giving them literal roads. I just want to read this. Like, they helped them build roads that they still need now. Like there's one line, I'll just say it, like, finding itself suddenly free of the competition from cheap Arab agricultural. So again, like I said, there's three things going on. The workers in Palestine, in the major cities, are now being let go because Jim Crow is happening. Apartheid is taking place. So they're not allowed to get hired in these higher paying jobs. And they're just like floating. They're like, what the F? The peasants got their land lost. And then you have also all these really educated people like Amilcar Cabral types who are returning home from the universities, maybe in Egypt or maybe Palestine, and are like, what do we do? Well, how do we get a job? So this is what's happening. And then finally, the British are giving weapons to them, the Zionists. They're letting the Haganah and the Irgun and the Birgun, and this is how I talk to my dad. He just rhymes random gibberish. It's just I'm getting angry. And it's literally, this is what they also do. Finding itself free from competition from cheap agriculture from Arabs, this bourgeoisie set out to entrench and develop its economic presence, the Zionists. Naturally, this would have been impossible without the blessings of the British. Over the course of the revolution, the Palestinian Revolution, the Zionists and the Mandate authorities succeeded in building a network of roads connecting the Jewish settlement colonies to one another and to the major cities. This road structure would later form a keystone of Zionist economic infrastructure. Ports played a central role in their infrastructure. The road connecting Haifa and Tel Aviv was paved. The Haifa port was expanded and deepened, and a new port was built in Tel Aviv that would eventually extinguish the vitality of the main Arab port in Jaffa. Like, all this BS that they like to say that they're a land of blooming flowers. It's a blooming flowers, and they're colored bright red because it's blood. And it's a set of land, and it just blew my mind that this is when it happened. I actually thought it would happen maybe like the 50s, but the fact this is predating the Nakba, and they're out here saying, yeah, you need a road, and this fact that there's Jewish settlement that where they have their roads connecting to each other, which is clearly what's going on now. If you're Palestinian, you can't ride certain roads. I mean, that part blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute, they were getting this prior to the Nakba? Like, it's incredible how little I knew about this, even as someone who's invested in what's happening. So I just wanted to raise that. It was crazy.
No, that's a good point, and I think it makes sense also because before atrocities, there's always some lead up. That usually gets ignored or downplayed over time. But what was the only other thing I wanted to come back to this part here, his assessment of why the revolt failed, or no, I'm sorry, wait. Yeah, I'm sorry. At the time, the Palestinian Communist Party attributed the failure of the revolt to 5 principal causes. 1, the absence of revolutionary leadership. 2, the individualism and opportunism of leaders of the revolt. 3, the lack of a central command for the forces of the revolt. 4, the weakness of the Palestinian Communist Party. And 5, the inauspicious world situation. So yeah, I just liked that he was wanting to include some. Again, I can't help but thinking about it in terms of the narrowness of my own project work, in our project work, but it's there's so much more going on, in other words, than in this case, Palestinians pool your resources and fight the Jews, like it's in other words, if we're trying to find a reason why Black America is where it is, it needs to go beyond. You just don't have, as John Hope Bryant keeps saying, you just didn't get the memo. You just didn't get the memo on what these other communities have gotten on financial literacy. And then here, I again, sort of in this assessment that Kanafani is doing, these facts as a whole show that the Palestinian revolt was attacked and received blows in at least 3 most vital points. Subjectively, meaning the incapacity, vacillation, weakness, subjectivity, and the anarchy of its various leaders. The Arab point, meaning the collusion of the Arab regimes to frustrate it at a time when the weak popular Arab national movement was only interacting with the Palestinian revolt in a selective, subjective, and marginal way. And I thought, again, this is exactly how Black entrepreneurialism and Black business is recounted falsely, fraudulently in its relationship to the history of the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, where people like Maggie Anderson and other Black entrepreneurial financial literacists want to argue that you need black businesses because they played this vital role in supporting the struggle. And no, they played a vital role in frustrating the radical elements of those struggles and putting a limitation on them, because at a certain point they recognize we benefit from this colonial structure.
Right.
And then lastly, the international point, meaning that the immense disequilibrium in the objective balance of power, which resulted from the alliance of all the members of the colonialist camp with each other, and also the Zionist movement, which was henceforward to have at its disposal a considerable striking force on the eve of the Second World War.
Right.
Anyway, I just thought it was it's what he was doing was very important then, and for an assessment now of this particular history. And I think methodologically, just like I said about his Zionist literature book, methodologically giving us a pathway forward for assessing the conditions we're looking at today. Yeah.
No, I love it. Like, that's the other thing about it. It's like the methods is what's important, because he has the numbers. He has the right kind of numbers. He's not just saying this is, causing this and that. He explains it. Then he has the history. He has the words of the people, actually. Again, that passage of the poet talking, it's thrilling, actually. And also writing wise, it's a fun book to read, in the sense of like you're getting to like know his own character through his work, because it's still social science, but it's writing. There's like a little bit of writing here, a narrative structure that I love. Like the fact that he broke down the classes and then led with the revolution is brilliant to me, and quite patient. And to use your phrase, I really like, I think I said we need to work on it, because I love it. So revolutionary patience, the last part where he mentions the inauspicious situation of the world history, because he's referencing how at this point in time, I think right around the time when World War II is about to really officially go off, the French and British are no longer fighting each other. So they're now like letting each other know where they're sort of calculating their strikes against the Arab nationalism that was starting to bloom. So that shuts down. I think that's what he was referencing too, because he mentioned how some Arabs were busy fighting both. And then, of course, the French and British were like not working together because they're French and British. But then with World War II happening, they were like, fuck it, we'll crack down at the same time. The French didn't use as much Zionism, because the French also weirdly, not to say, I don't know how to say it, like they're anti-Semitic, but at the same time it's like, whatever, but they were not exactly friends of Jews either. British had a different relationship because of Lord Balfour, who's but
they still hate Arabs, and they still have their colonial memories in northern Africa. Right. So they're like, they were probably looking at Palestine like just and kirking out trick like, oh, Algerians, Moroccans, Tunisians,
To that point, they did so but it was like funny in Lebanon. It's clear that they were then trying to cut it, because what I didn't know is a lot of Arab nationalists were saying that Syria and Lebanon should be one, and they were also cutting that off. So the inauspicious world history was the French and British being like, you know what, well, you have your little guys come in and fighting you, and you have ours. We'll crack down on them regardless now, because I'm sure earlier French were like, as long as you're fighting the British, like you said, we'll weaken them, and then we can focus on Algeria. But now it's the turning point. What put me in the bind is like how to think about that situation, because I know Ghassan Kanafani is not suggesting, and this is where the phrase of revolutionary patience comes in. I know he's not suggesting then don't do what you need to do because the timing is not right, but he's probably arguing about a form of revolutionary patience, of like you need to do other things to build up because what's missing is revolution in the surrounding areas too. Because if that happens, then you can have real chaos in Transjordan and Egypt, and this is before Nasser.
But it's also making that point that nobody gets free by themselves, and again, if I'm thinking about the situation here, that he's saying you can't perform and you can't assess why you're not having more success without understanding what forces are working against you. So that's why, as he says here, that like, sort of concluding the moment that he's focused on in this book, he's saying, thus the Zionist movement entered the 1940s to find the field practically clear for it, with the international climate extremely favorable following the psychological and political atmosphere caused by Hitler's massacres of the Jews, while the Arab regimes in the neighboring Arab countries were bourgeois regimes in the historical predicament without any real power.
Yeah.
And that's the exact predicament of the black bourgeoisie that emerged after the suppression of the heightened levels of anti-colonial struggle in the 60s and 70s. The black bourgeoisie is emerged, and black capitalism finds the path clear for anyway. I'm just trying to draw that parallel inexpertly and quickly, but that's how I was reading this in terms of both understanding what Kanafani is saying about that history, but also what we're looking at here. Yeah.
And also the other key thing is like, but they also think they have power, but they don't. That's the other thing he keeps. I just loved it because that's what and the same the black bourgeoisie, even the Asian American. I was about to say the Asian American. This might sound very controversial, but our relationship in this text, I was thinking both and. I was thinking about, of course, how Asians also don't get heard in the ways by other Asian leaders, but also we're quote unquote the Jews in this case. Like again, with how we're being positioned, like we're because like you mentioned with our project, it's the Asians being held up. And Asians being such a broad thing, but we're thinking East Asian held up as the pinnacle. Even if black folks might feel a certain kind of anger against Asians, rightly so, because of what they do allegedly in terms of stores, but they still have a flavor of like, well, they still got their store. So we got to, figure and learn. So I felt like that was going on in text for me.
Interesting.
The mythology of the Asians and the legend of the Asian, right? And Claire Jean Kim, the book we read, I was reviewing it for my own dissertation, and I remember this quote I took, and she did make that parallel about Korean merchants and Jewish merchants in black neighborhoods. She said in both cases there was anger towards them, justifiably so, but she made that connection. She said, like, some Asians are replacing that earlier quote unquote ethnic Jewish stop owner who didn't live in the neighborhood but lived elsewhere. It's still perpetually political and economic, but that's what I was reading into. I'm not arguing that Asians of a certain kind are Zionists, but there's a similar level.
But it's also similar in the sense that even going back to the foundation of our project here, like I'm forgetting his name now, but the Donut King himself is this bourgeois, emergent comprador who is also used to to carry that he was also in that same, what Kanafani says here, predicament of not having any real power. So it's like he's held up as the example for all Asians and black people to follow, but he only has power to the extent he's helping as we would point out, the right-wing Republican Party in their business interests and
Cambodia
and their ruling elite. Like it's not like he had a power to actually change the material conditions of all of his people. And most of the people he ended up helping out through licenses of donut shops are just individual proprietor, small business owners with their own families working in there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right.
So, I mean, it's like all you've done is like lock someone else into the bottom of the pyramid that you climbed yourself out, so it's
the without the power that stood out to me. Because again, it's very Fanonian. Like he literally is saying what Fanon said a decade earlier, which is like these bourgeois people, like he also says there's a missing link in the chain of events. Like typically, like he's arguing, there should be a bourgeois revolution first, and then Palestine will become this classless society that we want, like a socialist. But he's saying through Zionism, they're forced to skip that step because now it's becoming so, like accelerated, the Zionist control of the area. So that's why the feudal lords who want to create. So he said the poets would have been in a typical situation, like in Europe, when they didn't have to deal with Zionism in that way or any kind of internal colonialism in that certain way, they would have a stage like the French Revolution, a stage of bourgeois, and they were missing that. And then ultimately, since they missed that stage, they got clipped. Their wings got clipped completely. They didn't even get the chance to be the next level of boss to fight in a video game. They just got clipped. There's no level for them. So that's why it was so fascinating where he's like, these guys didn't even have power. They keep tinkering. They're like, we'll sell a little of land, and they thought they were going to a table that was even for them with their dumbass. And then of course, there wasn't. They were like, oh yeah, the British respected. Like there are tons of places where the leaders of certain, even the Palestinian feudal lords, are like, not well. The Mufti was a little bit more dithering. He was afraid dithering because he began to be like a little uncomfortable because he was like, wait, what's hold on? Am I losing land too? Because I'm the Mufti of Palestine. But the other Arab leaders, they were saying like beautiful letters to the British mandate office, saying, "We know you're so kind, and we're here for you. Rest your head on my shoulder. Let a tear flow down. Let my shoulder get wet." And of course, they would also say things to their people, saying, "Please don't fight." They said that when 36 popped off. They're the ones who said stop it. And they even said something that was so fascinating, which is directly related to our thing. They said it's not Arab culture to do this. Think of your values. And I was like, I forgot what line. I was like, that's hilarious.
Oh my God, I got to write this down. Somebody, if you go back, Killer Mike's speech.
Oh, I love that guy.
If you go back and watch the Killer Mike speech after George Floyd was killed, that's what he was saying.
Oh, right. What did he say? Well, he's crying, right? He's weeping.
He was crying and he's saying, "Don't revolt."
Wakanda, something.
And he says something to the effect, or alluding to that, this isn't our culture. This isn't what we do. And he's saying the same thing. Kanafani, he plays the role of the black bourgeoisie, saying of that feudal elite. Right. Who's recognizing, if you burn down all the shops, you're burning down my business. If you if you're out there rioting, you can't come and spend money in my store or in my barber shop. So it's that same, that's the parallel that I keep coming. It's like and they're the financial literacists saying, don't rebel. Just give your money to me. We will black business our way to freedom and buy ourselves some politicians, and you don't have to. And Kanafani is saying so again, that's why I'm going to keep saying, if we're going to say be like the Asians, be like the Asians.
Yes, be like the Asians. Exactly. Or be like the Asians for real, because when they also reference the Afro-Asian conferences where they're going to China and stuff, he says Ghassan Kanafani went to China and India. He went there. He straight up went there. So it's like the world, the inauspicious world history. That's the other thing that you're right. Like the ways that people think about Asian black folks here, there's a tendency to obviously understand level of hardship, and there's frustration growing. But still, it's like, it's still so myopic, regardless of educational background. It's nothing to do with Yale or Rutgers or anything. I've seen it everywhere. People are like, I just don't want war. Fair. But the lesson should be the Iranians and the Palestinians are fighting for us. That is the through line. If Palestine falls, we fall. And it's falling now. The freedom of speech stuff that's going down, the way that DEI is being attacked, even though, of course, that formula was quite bizarre sometimes and how it was attended to. But nonetheless, there's something going on, and it bled through the bloody portal of Gaza under Biden. Once Gaza happened, where it's happened, and Biden talked about the dead babies, that portal was opened. That portal was opened to all the mess that we're also dealing with domestically. So, but again, our people, the ones who allege to be our representatives, don't have power. That's the thing that I also love about his analysis, soberly. Like you said, like, they just don't have power. They think they do. And to the point of like, don't burn my business. One ad I would add to that little ripple. You're right. Don't burn businesses, buy from me. But you know what else they were probably thinking? I think he mentioned, oh, the Zionists are coming. They have more money. I would love for them to spend at my donut shop. So that's what they were thinking. Yeah.
Oh, look at the language. Even I should have. Oh man, now I'm coming up with yet another thing I should do that I don't have time or won't get to or whatever, or the discipline. It's not even time. I just don't have the discipline. But I should look for, and a few people have sent me a couple of things. I should just organize. I should look at, but the point I'm getting at is that the black business community in the cities where the FIFA World Cup is planning to be have been making that kind of argument, even going back decades to the Atlanta Olympics, where again or even before that, where. Oh, all right. Listen. All right. Do you have a few minutes? Are you?
Yeah. No. I have.
Right.
I admit.
Technically, I don't. I should be wrapping up. But now. So I'm gonna do this here. I was gonna save this, but look, a few people have sent me All right. So let me just finish that thought. Then I'll do. So the point being that there is this long history of the black bourgeoisie siding with the broader business community around those kinds of ideas of
Right.
let's attract that revenue. That's why, you know, the black mayors of Atlanta for years have been saying, let's bring the Olympics and Coca-Cola and this event and that event, because we get it too.
Yeah.
I haven't watched American college football in a long time.
Oh yeah.
But I
won?
was sent.
Who won? Indiana?
I have no idea.
Oh,
but
okay.
I was sent. What I was sent was this right here. Let's see. It's gonna go. It starts at. Where was I told to start it? I think I was told to start it right here. I'm going to beg your and everyone else's indulgence. All right. So first, I'm going to again encourage everyone to check out Palestine in film, and one of the many great discussions I've had with Samantha Youssef about Palestine 3.6, and I'll put the link in the show description here, but I just want to make sure people, so I encourage you, Sudip, to watch our discussion even before you see the film. It doesn't ruin the film, but one or the other, watch the film and our discussion. I think that'll be helpful. And then I'm going to, I was sent this discussion here. Bomani Jones is one of my favorite mainstream sports journalist types. And he had this discussion about college football. And I just want to play this short bit of it because
that's what they're going to do. Yes, they
you'll
are.
see my point.
Let's back up for a second. Let's talk about LSU and Ole Miss for a second. Why is LSU? Why do we have all of those numbers in column A that says LSU is a better job? It's because of state population. It's because of the state economy. It's because the amount of disposable income available for a particular NIL donor. Like, all of these numbers add up for a reason. So now let's talk about the state of Alabama and the state of Georgia and the state of Mississippi. They all sit next to each other, right? Okay. One of those states had a capital city that aggressively, and I'm not saying perfectly, but I'm saying aggressively endeavored to better their racial dynamic, to welcome not only, and this wasn't, by the way, none of this is altruism. I want to be really clear here. I'm not sitting here talking as a cookie cutter white liberal. This was about making money. Yes. But this is ultimately what we're talking about as well. And when it comes to football, it's about money. So the state of Georgia and the city of Atlanta 30, 40, 50 years ago said, you know what? You know what's more profitable than holding on to the old ways and fighting the good fight against the minorities? Making some money, right? So the city and state government, for a time with Atlanta and Georgia, locked arms and said, hey, every European business, you know what we are? Air travel's the future. We're going to be the way station for the world. We're going to bring in all these German and Dutch and English businesses. We already have every interstate in America and every train yard that comes through here. Guess what that trickles down to, Bo? In 2026, the University of Georgia is damn near a professional football team for that reason, because they have the city of Atlanta, that population, and specifically that urban population, as we say in white circles, in case we're worried about someone maybe overhearing it. It's an urban population that creates football players, okay? So why does Mississippi not have any of that? Because they didn't do any of that 40, 50, 60 years ago. So if you just look at Ole Miss and LSU, Louisiana is not a...
So first of all, is if I'm following it, and just in case others are following it, what he's saying is, in the context of talking about college football, and this white guy that Bomani is talking to has said, if you give me enough time, I can use college football to explain any social condition. And this is the point that I've been making about buying power, mixtapes, the banana method that Laura Shia was talking about with Francois Vergez the other day. Like, all of these things, this is the point. And he's saying what Kanafani is saying, that the black bourgeoisie benefited and benefits from the settler colonial relationship. And Sudip, I'm gonna mute you for a second because I'm hearing feedback in your, and I keep hearing there's some feedback, and I'm struggling to keep follow my own thoughts. Sorry about that. But he's saying that much like Kanafani is saying about the Palestinian bourgeoisie, the feudal, that first of all, the feudal structure is dependent upon the broader imperial structure, the broader colonial structure. So Georgia has, as he says, a damn near a professional football team because they bring in all this money, because Atlanta made a very conscious decision to bring in all that international money that you were just talking about, to bring in all of this, to wed itself to the broader imperialist structure, with the idea from the perspective of the black bourgeoisie that there will be a trickle-down effect that will benefit them. All right. And as he said at the beginning, if we could get over the old ways of racial hostility and allow just for the symbolic presence and inclusion of some black people, we will make way more money than if we hold on to these old forms of segregation. It has nothing to do with which is also why you can quote unquote desegregate and still have situations like where I live in Howard County, Maryland, which is often reported as one of the best places to live in the country, where there is no official segregation, and yet the public schools are some of the most segregated spaces in the state, because once everybody goes in the same door, they're put into different parts of the building and into different classrooms. So there's an appearance. And what it does is it reduces the likelihood of rebellion, increases the likelihood of more of capital extraction and labor and wealth extraction and et cetera and so forth. And on we go. So let me just play a couple more minutes of this and then we can wrap up.
Racially harmonious institution by any stretch, right? New Orleans has its problems. Baton Rouge has its problems. But Mississippi stands alone as the forefront example of staring at progress with all its potential financially. I'm not talking about anything other than financial for a second. Okay. I'm not doing that Pollyanna shit and saying, guess what? And then they pull out a gun and shoot themselves in the foot twice over. So to go all the way back around, Kiffin ultimately made a financial decision. LSU's paying him more. They're promising more in NIL.
There's a little bit more.
The reason they're doing that is because there are fewer people and fewer millionaires in Mississippi. And then when we ask ourselves why, we got to start talking about things that we don't like to talk about.
Yeah, and Mississippi used to have the most millionaires per capita in America, but that was back when the industry was configured a little differently. You make a great point about Atlanta, because it's something that I hadn't really thought about until this moment as you said it. But just about every city in that main drag of the South has tried to, every state in that main drag of the South has tried to choke out its major city. Louisiana has historically tried to choke out New Orleans. Tennessee has done it with Memphis. Alabama has done that with Birmingham. It is criminal what Mississippi does with Jackson. Atlanta is the only one where the state did not decide to kill it. There's some very interesting trades in order to make it work that way, but they did not decide to kill it. And look at what the results were.
Yeah, and when you have some billionaire business come from out of town, they have to have a city for the infrastructure. This is like, I feel like we're now in a sociology class, but all of this factor, the reason I work in football, the reason why I work in college football specifically, is I can tell you any story in the world with college football. You may not want to hear it, and I may have to dress it a lot more football for you to get the medicine down, but we can sit here and talk about the economic destruction of the South, the advancement of a place like Atlanta. It all factors into football. That's why the SEC championship's in one city and it's not in another.
So I just wanted to, I just, coming on, people sent me that, and I know it's not a direct parallel, but I think that there are a couple of them, including this, that the point I was just making, that the apparent quote unquote success of any particular pocket in a society is very much dependent upon their relationship to whatever broader structures are at play. So whether we're talking about Black Wall Street, whether we're talking about 2026 Atlanta, or whether we're talking about 1936 or 2026 Palestine, that is all at play. That's all at play. And Kanafani is saying we need to step back. Let's be clear. What were the forces that created the Zionist hellhole? And some of it has to include acknowledging the feudal structure that was imposed and complicit. And that's why we see so many, that's why Killer Mike comes out there and says, stop rioting. That's why pick the black capitalist. And then, even today's Palestinian compradors who who either, like DJ Khaled, say nothing or would even dare say, you know, it's the Palestinians' fault because our own people rebel violently and haven't, you know, figured out our financial literacy and et cetera and so forth. So anyway, that's it for me. Let me my bad. Let me unmute you. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. And yeah.
Do you still hear the background noise or anything?
It's only when I'm talking that I heard it. So
okay.
yeah,
Maybe
fine.
something happened,
Yeah.
but no, I love that clip. I do listen to Bamani sometimes too, just because it's a little bit more different than obviously I listen to a lot of shit sports stuff, except for the more right wing stuff. I obviously leave it there. But what that reminded me is also the discussion about, again, the advancement that's happening, which is good in comparison to Ole Miss, which I hate, you know, because it's a Confederate little. I was going to say something really mean, but it's a Confederate little hell. So, but the funny thing is also advancement is contained, right? Which is, you know, the advancement is about building your infrastructure to attract European businesses, right? So again, it's still back to his point, like with the feudal lords, they were hoping to get advancement, but it was within the Zionist infrastructure, which they again failed to realize had encapsulated them. That's the other thing. They were also thinking, I got mine, I'll be good forever. But again, to the black bourgeoisie and the Asian American bourgeoisie, it's a different containment zone because we're not having necessarily our land completely taken, because it's for the indigenous people, that's true. But nonetheless, there is this delusion, political delusion, that is made to be material, because how they talk to us is always about, oh, you know, Dr. Ball, if they say even doctor, but they're like, oh, Jared, you're silly. You don't understand math. You don't understand economics. But the funny thing is they don't get it. They're dependent on the white people in power still. With John Hope Bryant, with his new book, I think you mentioned like all the people, you know, who collaborated to say good job. A lot of them are white. Again, it's not just about that. It wouldn't,
not
you know,
just white. They're the most ruling elite, and including Reed Hoffman of Epstein Island fame.
Oh, right.
So he's got. I mean, John Hope Bryant is again. It's accidentally the perfect explanation. I mean, that's who his team. That's Team Black Bourgeoisie.
Right.
The white ruling elite that wouldn't have even allowed him to go to Epstein Island with them.
Or Elon Musk too, when he was like desperately emailing them, like whatever. Like they're still losers within the losers. But to your point, they're still dependent. That's the thing, is like they're claiming to be material, they're claiming to be smart, they're claiming to be the ones to offer hope to people, but they're the delusional ones, and they're the ones who are also dependent. They have nothing really to offer the people. We do. And that's the thing about Ghassan Kanafani's analysis, because like he's also trying to understand not just the Zionist question, but the Palestinian question in the face of like, okay, so we had this nationalist mini movement started. What happened? And what happened was a lot of these Arab compradors also took a little slice, but they also got outpaced. The Palestinians got outpaced by the other Arab compradors, like say of Jordan and of Iraq, prior to their own, you know, revolution to become a republic. People forget a lot of these states were carved out by the British and given over to collaborators straight up. The Ottomans ruled that area for thousands and thousands of years. They had their little fiefdoms, but it was not what the British Mandate offered. The British Mandate made up kingdoms. They made them up. Like Saud, the House of Saud is nothing. The House of Saud, you know, chef's kiss to the House of Saud. Hope they don't get too angry on me. The House of Saud is a fake ass house. It's Game of Thrones. They're only there because they said to the British, we'll work with you. And that's how it happened. But what's the irony now is what we're seeing in the news today. Saudi Arabia, I think, recently said they will not like work with Israel until they stop bombing. But again, once again, what Kanafani said about them, they will ultimately be outpaced. Because if Greater Israel needs to happen, it'll happen. It doesn't give America and the English don't give a shit if that also involves taking land from some of the other Arab nations which are too weak, like Syria, where they got an Al-Qaeda guy in there and he's like busy killing minorities. But what I'm saying is like he told all this in this one little book, and I'm saying little not to belittle it, just saying like he got loads and loads of analysis, cultural, material, historical, economic. His analysis of the Jewish labor problem with Palestinians was so in depth. You know, his condemnation of the Palestinian Communist Party was not to say they're stupid, but I think in one part he said when the revolution was starting, they rightfully joined.
But the way they still spun it was still, like he said, wrong. Because they kept saying rise up against your Arab masters, your Jewish masters who are bourgeoisie. But he said they did not mention Zionism. They mentioned Zionism late. And then they had splits over the Arab question, and they got more and more racist. So he also had to explain that. So I just want to say, like, Ghassan Kanafani has written 2 books on their own. If I was able to write them, I would be like what you were doing with the background. I would have that background perpetually if anyone wants to talk to me. I'm good. These are 2 classic texts that everybody needs to read. Like, this and this should be required reading for anybody. That's all I got to say about those 2. These are required. You got your cultural analysis of the enemy, and you also got your analysis of what to do and what not to do. It's just brilliant. And I'm sorry, I gush over this because it's like this man gave so much of his heart to the people, to his friends, to the person he loved, his children. Like his wife mentioned how he played with them, and he gave so much of his time to analysis and to, I don't know. It's really moving. And honestly, they'll never kill him. They killed him, but they'll never take him away. He's too brilliant. He's the poet. He's the one living in heaven saying to all the other people, like, what happened to you? Like, well, I'm too creative for that. I didn't really die. I moved on from this life, but we have all this stuff with him. It's just brilliant. It's brilliant. So sorry. It's just like,
no, that's perfect. I think it's perfect. And I think it's a great way to wrap up this discussion, unfortunately, for today. And yeah, sorry, I just got distracted there for a second. So listen, everybody, please do all the things to support the show, the platform. The link to Sudip's work is in the show description. To the work we've been talking about is in the show description. Our broader playlist around the Donut King project is in the show description. Stay tuned. We'll let you know when we'll be back again and what next steps we're taking on our project. And Sudip, I just greatly appreciate this project, the work, your suggestions and contribution. And I think you're going to go off and do some work. I should go off and do some work. We'll see if that actually happens. And but anytime you're ready and whenever we'll keep it going. And so thank you very much. This has been great.
Thank you. And again, I know you have to run, but I really appreciate the space you offer here for Saw people, and also just to Ghassan Kanafani, like, he was amazing. He's a legend and just very inspiring in these times. Like, I feel so revved up to write everything that I do with you and other people and to speak up. So he did the work.
Absolutely. And I'm with you on that. Team Kanafani all day. Man. So salute to you, to the undefeated chat. Thank you all very much for coming through. Please, again, like, share, subscribe, support the platform, all of our satellite atmospheric platforms as well. Make sure you have the bell rung, double check your subscription, make sure you like and do all those things, all of that. And so you're not missing stuff. Go check all the other stuff. More stuff is coming. And again, salute everybody. This has been great. More on its way. Peace. Only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say, and as Kanafani damn sure demonstrated and said, and chose. I make the joke all the time. The last time I had a choice, I chose my HBCU. When he had a choice, he chose the struggle. Said, I'm not going nowhere. I'm not leaving nowheres. So salute. Anyway, peace, everybody. Thanks again. Catch you next time.
And what did you sacrifice? Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. My wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, have set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy and defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Well, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.